It's a very fitting song, isn't it, chat? Breeding song, but with goblins rather than ponies, which is unfortunate, but hey, I have yet to see a goblin breeding simulator on Steam. Actually, on second thought, you know what? I don't want to know. I don't want to know, because I'm pretty sure that there probably is one, isn't there? There probably is one. Unironically, there probably is one. God help me. Anywho, hello chat. Welcome back to Equestria at War, where I still don't know what the Sturmjäger thing does. I wonder if I can do that multiple times. Let's see, I think I can do that multiple times. Very nice. Welcome back to the reading of the 5,000-page novel. There's a person who worked on this mod who really wanted to be J.R.R. Tolkien, basically. Or at the very least, George R.R. Martin, the cake that walks, but he was a little bit too fascinated with ponies, and so this was the only place he could get published. Thus, here we are. Meeting the new old governor. Al-Sipi stood up to the aide's all-clear nod. I want to know how the hell that name is pronounced. Gesturing for Marcillo and Finicus to do the same. She did her best to stifle a yawn as she did so. Spending the day touring Canterlot had been fun, if exhausting affair. It had been nice to go see things like the Canterlot archives and the city's old museums to a time before the Alicorn sisters' rule over Equestria, even if moving about the city had been tense at best. She certainly hadn't failed to notice their bodyguards forcibly emptying their destinations of all ponies inside before they arrived just to be safe. But none of that mattered now. It was time to greet the new governor of Canterlot. So leading her friends up to General Mayor Yak's door, she only knocked once before opening the door and bursting with a cheerful exclamation of congratulations. Yax jumped in his seat, surprised by the sudden entrance, which wasn't help when Finicus popping the cork of a bottle of a champagne boomed around the office like a gunshot. When he saw it was his friends, however, Yax let out a happy sigh and stood up. Don't scare me like that, he teased. Clip, I thought the Queen's officials had come back for round 2. Chrysalis, gone wouldn't bring champagne to a goons. To anything would they, Finicus asked, quickly pouring the fizzy drink into 4 glasses and passing them about. Congratulations on the new title, though. From what I've gathered, you would much rather have gone without it, eh? It is an honor, even if the responsibilities that come with it are daunting, Yax admitted. Now, I not only have to coordinate the hair strategy throughout Central Equestria, but I also have to dip my hooves into civil affairs. At least I'll have Al-Sipi to help with that. Al-Clip, And I'll be taking over laboratories and ongoing research here in Canterlot, Marcelo said. You won't have to concern yourself with that. That's good, Yax said, then raised an eyebrow at Finicus. And what brings the president and CEO of Main Hives out to Canterlot? Well, officially I'm here as the director of the Canterlot headquarters of Main Hives, Finicus began, but he added with a wink, but in reality, I just needed a vacation. A bug's gotta relax, you know. Then he held up his glass. So what are we waiting for? Are we going to toast to the new governor, or not? Ooh, boy. You know, I can't wait until I get to play the Black Myth Wukong game that comes out in a few days. I'll probably stream that on launch, even if it's going to be in the middle of the goddamn night. Do I? Wait. Oh, okay, I don't need to wait, apparently. in the middle of the night because, it'll just be nice to have somebody else voice acting for me for a little while. God, that game had better have voice acting. If it does not have voice acting, I am going to be truly, genuinely upset. Canterlot resistant target, resistant decay speed. Triple threat. Local on-call pointy power. I do like the sound of that. Alright, Das 96 Canterlonian. Let's go for that one. So the Firewater. Archway. I bought Barotrauma when you were, I'm presuming, talking about yesterday. When is the Fish Boyfriend collab so we can see Fish suffer in her natural habitat? Also, here's money for Nightmare Moon playthrough. Nightmare Moon playthrough, okay. Equestria, $2. I'll note that down. I'll probably need to do I'll do a couple of other things first, I imagine. Miro, 409. Ha! Only 5,000 pages? Nothing like the Long March Through Worm by Wildbow. It's around 7,000 pages and 1,680,000 words. But does it contain ponies? That is an important question, of course. Need more rubber, as it turns out. Right, I'll just import more from the Protectorate. And Rubberleg623, speaking of the cake that walks, playing EA as Nightmare Luna. Equestria's War, I'm presuming. As Nightmare Luna just got an event that describes graffiti depicting Celestia as a obese pony gorging on cake. Painted by commies, of course. I like that. Also, would you like to commit that towards the, Nightmare Moon playthrough, incidentally? Just write it in chat if you do, and oh God help me. The good old days. The past few weeks had been such a whirlwind of frenzied activity that General Major Yax could... By the way, we are going to make a tracking system to track multiple goals. It'll be ready soon, probably. General Major Yax could barely separate one day from another. His promotion to Governor of Canterlot had been both the opportunity of a lifetime and a kick out of the hive into a deep, deep well of responsibility. Getting a good night's sleep had certainly been one of the first things he'd sacrificed to make the new position work. But as he sat on his balcony overlooking Canterlot, a glass of whiskey within easy reach, his mind started to wander back to simpler times. It was incredible to think how far he'd come from commanding the 96th Infantry Division, known colloquially as Das 96th. As an Orbist at the start of the Great War, from a colonel flung into some of the toughest and nastiest fighting in the entire war, to Governor of Canterlot and all of Central Equestria. It was amazing how time could fly. His thoughts of the old 96 sent him reminiscing about the soldiers he used to serve with. They'd all been through the worst modern warfare had to offer, and somehow survived. They'd seen it all from the siege of Aikenage to the bombardment of Clousdale and the fall of Canterlot. Many of his old comrades had returned to civilian life at the end of the war. Many more had been promoted to command other divisions in the Hair, or even the Queen's Guard. And with the need to decompass and demobilize, the 96 had been one of the casualties and disbanded. What war had failed to do, peace had accomplished. The soldiers of 96th scattered to the winds. It was a sombering thought to know they'd never served together in these new times of peace the Hive found themselves in. Or was it that final? Yax frowned into his drink and realized that he now has the ability to abuse his powers. As a quick summary, it's what he was going to arrive at. See, the game is presenting Yax here as a very good lad, yes? Okay, can I... Oh, has the Lend Lease finally ended? I thought I set, like, End Lease in perpetuity of, like, 5% arms forever and ever. No? Okay, well, I've hopefully given them enough. You there. Never mind, I am still actually shipping you assloads of stuff. Never mind, we will simply ship you a further assload of stuff then, including some of our own old gun foxes. They served us very well in the old Great War. And seeing as you are currently engaged in another great war on the other side of the pond, I figured you could maybe make some use out of the old gun foxes. Even though you're probably, fighting fucking fighters and shit at this point, but hey! You don't need to worry about these things being shot down because they're free. Of course, the, obvious manpower, fatigue and loss that will also occur from this will drain your coffers slowly but surely, but not my problem, now is it? I'm not even halfway through the fucking event yet. Dragon Mass Outcast, good morning, Arch. I found your 1943 skiing rock climbing vacation photo. Ah, the Alpini, I guess. If only they'd gotten to the funny parts in the Soviet oil fields. Oberstleutnant L. Sippy walked out onto the balcony, dossier after dossier fanned out in her magic and held in front of her face. Generalmajor, what are all these, she asked, setting them aside and turning to Yax, who seemed to be watching the parting clouds hanging over the city with calm interest. We've been processing the re-enlisting papers for so many veterans. Are you up to something? Just an old bug reliving the glory days at the state's expense, Jack said, glancing at Alsip and inviting her to sit, seeing who's still around and who's interested in coming to Canterlot to make a difference. Alsip, Alclip, Alpick, I don't even know now, stifled a small chuck. Chuckle, chuckle, chuckle. You're hardly an old bug, Yax, she said. She still wants to breed him, instantly. And what do you mean, coming to make a difference? We need more bugs like us in Canterlot, Yax explained. We need changelings that don't bend over backwards for queen and country. We need changelings who are willing to find a balance between what's good for the hives and what's good for the ponies we rule. What the hare is seeing these days is mostly zealous recruits and fanatics. Perfect for the Queen's Guard, but not for keeping the peace. And if I can bring together my comrades from the old 96th under my command, if I can make us serve as a role model for how we should police Equestria, then I think that maybe, just maybe, there's a chance the Pax Chrysalis survives. But how do you know they all think like you, Yax? Alclip asked. War is one thing, but peace, that is something else. We were disciplined 7 times in the Great War for being too lenient with our prisoners, Yax said, frowning at the horizon. We were about as moderate as a division could get, and I doubt very much that what my old comrades have been since the war scene has hardened their hearts instead of reaffirming our beliefs. He looked straight at Alcippe, almost as if he was looking through her eyes and into her soul. Breathing, 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 breathing. The world doesn't have to be boots stepping on the necks. I'll bring the 96 back together. I'll bring the 69th back together. And we'll show changelings and ponies alike that occupation does not have to mean oppression. It can mean mutual fellatio as well. And I intend to demonstrate that, Eclipse. Eclipse simply just raises an eyebrow and goes, Ach my. Generalmajor. I don't like the fact that I immediately get a mental image of Ilsa, she-wolf of the, I hate you, of the SS, slapping her hand with a whip. Jesus Christ, this is one event! He's merely just abusing his power to get his soldiers back together. I was not kidding about the 5,000 goddamn pages. Generalmajor Yax sat on the balcony of Canterlot Castle, enjoying a warm summer's day in Equestria's grandest city. Enjoying the fucking sheer vociferousness of his character writer, more correctly. This is somebody's fanfic, I guarantee you. This is somebody's self-insert right here. Though most changelings preferred the cold of back home, Yax had spent enough time in central Equestria that he'd grown used to the pleasant temperature and sunny days. How does the sun keep rising without Celestia, incidentally? Oh well, details. And after a full day of meetings and tough decision-making, sometimes the best way to relax was just to review and sign paperwork outside with a glass of something stiff by his side to unwind before dinner. It was 5 o'clock in Manhattan anyway, right? The lack of a breeze was nice, as Yax didn't have to worry about the wind catching any papers off the stack he had on the table next to him. He could take his time reviewing the papers, and when the small black letters strained his eyes, all he had to do was look out over the beautiful expanse of countryside below him, for a few minutes before he was ready to tackle the next wave of missives. It was after one of those breaks that he pulled open a reinforcement request from the Queen's Guard, something he would have signed and forgotten about in a second had he not noticed the way the report tried to say nothing at all. Frowning, he pulled it closer with his magic and gave it a second look over. The report was as plain as it could be, a simple request for more soldiers to guard the mines beneath Canterlot. That was odd. What could be in the mines beneath Canterlot that the Queen's Guard needed more troops? He knew that wasn't a question he could just ask. The fact the Queen's Guard went out of the way to explain as little as possible made that pretty clear, but did he decide to give them more soldiers or not? Obviously not. Again, the simple rule of this mod is side, help me, against the Queen for, this has gotta be a record. Side against the Queen's Guard at all times. Never, ever, ever give them anything whatsoever at all. Are we gonna destroy Ponyville? That seems a little bit cruel. Don't you think people will object? I mean, I do kind of want to, you know, get done with this. Because the everfree is bothering me, so pacify Ponyville, 70 days. Maybe that'll give me a small break. Also, these are quicker. No, Unicorn Blues first then. Harmonic Drive, Arch. Every pony OC is a self-insert. Brony equals crazy. I'm starting to believe it. Soldiers of Canterlot. It had taken some time, but Yax had finally done it. A non-stop series of phone calls, telegrams, and in-person meetings had all been leading up to this moment, and getting the official clearance from the Queen herself had been as simple as presenting a paper to her and stating that it was for the recruitment of more soldiers to garrison Canterlot and keep the peace. Chrysalis didn't care who Yax wanted when he promised her it meant more changeling soldiers in the pony capital. She liked to look at the little numbers on a board and laugh when the math favoured her instead of bothering to look at what the numbers meant at the end of the day. And now, as the fanfare of trumpets and the stomping of hooves came to a stop in the Plaza of the Sun, General Major Yax stepped out of the podium in his finest parade uniform, all brand new and tailored for the occasion, save for the old patch of the old 69th that he'd saved from his previous uniform, and sewn into the fabric. Arranged before him were the old 69th Cantelonian Infantry Division, with around half of the soldiers, including much of the NCOs and officers, consisting of alumni from the original division, and then the half filled with names recommended by those like-minded colleagues he had talked to. They were an impressive force, a beautiful force, and Yax knew they would make him proud. With the division at his back, it was time to change the Pack Chrysalis for the better, starting with Canterlot. Well, isn't that just absolutely kawaii or something? Oh, there's General Major Alcipi. Not as cute as I was hoping, frankly. Ooh, still Mega Commando. Hello. You lads are rather elite. You're entirely the wrong template, mind you, to be actually effective at this point in time, but still, you've got some good experience there. We no longer get the effects for post-war euphoria. Oh, don't worry, I haven't known post-war euphoria for quite some time now. I don't even know if I've ever recognized that feeling, honestly. It's been elusive at the very least. And gets more elusive every moment that passes by. Of course that would be a second event. Dabbling the esoteric, so-called Cornucopia Society is as thick to pierce through normal means. Leadership, who knows just what won't happen. Putting a hoof down. Another trap decision, eh? Okay. Loose lips. I have to admit, these small moments are becoming all the more precious, General. I don't even care anymore, Marcelio said, raising his glass of whiskey in a salute before downing it in at a gulp. I would have thought that things would begin to slow down after a while, but no, we're still busy as ever. Tell me about it. Especially with the new projects the Queen keeps dumping in my lap. General Major Yax took a sip of his own glass. You don't say. He grimaced and said aside, for the moment, he should have watered it down a little bit before taking the drink straight like a Marsilio preferred. You drafted the Seattle Protocols. I thought your team was focusing on the operation of the Lebes am Meldinist. Not tackling a new thing. Things get boring if you don't have new challengers placed in front of you. Marcelio said, shrugging. With a new kind of love we're investigating, that's something interesting, more powerful, more potent than any kind of love we've seen before. I'm told it comes from one pony, but it's stronger than what you'd find from a large family. Fascinating. Fascinating stuff. Where'd you get it? That certainly took Yax by surprise. Me? What are you talking about? I haven't approached any special shipments of love from Canterlot to your labs, and certainly nothing unique. Are you sure you're getting them from Canterlot? Marcelo blinked in confusion. Well, I thought you were behind it, he said. The shipments were received are all stamped from the Canterlot Commissariat. I'd assumed they'd passed by with your approval. No, I don't know what you're talking about, Yax frowned and thought. Actually, now that you mention it, I did see a missive from the Queen's Guard requesting more security in the mines beneath Canterlot. I dismissed it at the time since they were being very hush-hush about it, and none of them confronted me about it. The two changelings shared a look. Special kind of love never seen before. Extra security in one of the most remote and secure places in Equestria. That sound odd to you? Nah, not particularly. You know, I am considering just giving up on making lore videos and just starting to read, I don't know, creepypastas or something. Because surely it can't be any more torturous than reading your average video game. Surely reading for 3 hours there will be a simple vacation compared to the, what am I on now, 7 hours worth of event reading in Equestria at War? Yes, something kinda. Triple threat. How many today? It was always the first question that Yax asked. Person whose name I've long since abandoned pronouncing. In the morning, when she delivered the day's items to his desk. The subject in question were the black folders. Again, I have long since given up on these names, put on top of the stack held in her magic. Those folders, black as the inky night sky, contained information on the threats critical to the stability and functioning of the Canterlot Commissariat. Most days there were none, though occasionally there would be 1 or 2. Today, however, 3. Alsip said, setting the stack on Yax's desk and pulling 3 off the top. Shall I read them for you, General Major? Yax's eyebrow raised at that. 3? Well, go ahead, summarize if you can. Alsip nodded and opened the first folder, skimming through its contents. A missive from Vops, she began. They believe they've uncovered an underground society of unicorn supremacists here in Canterlot, based, calling themselves the Cornucopia Society. They're going to intensify operations to determine if that's true, but they wanted to let you know. She set the folder aside and grabbed the next. A letter from some concerned townsponies along with a report from the Queen's Guard. The townsponies said they believe there's some sort of underground drug den stirring up trouble in the lower levels of Canterlot. The Queen's Guard think they're part of a harmonic resistance cell, and they demand that you do something about it before the Queen visits Canterlot for her grand coronation. Then she grabbed the last folder and found a hit. And this is a letter from Finicus asking if you want to try out this new love den he found in Lowtown Canterlot. She tossed the folder aside, so only 2 things of importance. We need to remind him not to use urgent folders for personal mail. Yak scratched his chin in thought. A supremacist cult, a resistance hideout, and a drug den. How much do you want to bet they're all connected? Well, the Queen's Guard want me to put the hoof down, so we know obviously what the choice is in that case. It is the opposite of what the Queen's Guard wants. Always, always, it is the opposite of whatever the Queen's Guard wants. Nice and simple. The modest, if nothing else, predictable in this regard. Help me. I am not even getting started on events anymore. Help indeed. Which one popped up first? I can't even tell anymore. Eeny, meeny, miny, mo. That time between day and night. Well, I've seen every kind of love imaginable, Marsilio said, tapping his hooves together. Deer, ponies, even a few griffins that volunteered. Young, old, single, married, young couples infatuated with each other. Even the bond between a mother and a child. But this is something else. It is potent, one of a kind. Whoever it's extracted from, they're very powerful. Please tell me I can breed Nightmare Moon somehow. It didn't take Yax all that long to put two and two together. If this is one of a kind, and the Queen's Guard is so interested in protecting the mines beneath Canterlot, then that's where this individual is likely to be held. And who could create such potent love save for one of the most magically powerful beings alive? The revelation left Marsilio's jaw hanging open for a second. The Alicorns, Celestia, Lunance, and Cadence all fled overseas, he said, frowning at his drink as his mind worked. But Twilight Sparkle, we haven't heard anything about her for so long, suspiciously little even. And I really want to breed Twilight, honestly. Like, to be honest with you, she's just not that attractive for a horse. You know, if I'm gonna have to fuck horses, I'd prefer at least Luna, Celestia in a pinch, and Cadence preferably, but Twilight? Nah. You know, that gives me that weird feeling I had when playing Necopara, where I thought, oh, a game about cute little catgirls. I'm really gonna enjoy this. And then they looked into my eyes and went, ooh, I'm retarded. I have the IQ of a child. I'm like, this makes me feel weird. I don't like this. I dislike this strongly, and then I never played it again. Yax took a sip of his drink. This time, he was happy that it was as stiff as it was. He didn't know if he'd been able to handle the epiphany that he felt was imminent. Marsilio continued. Twilight Sparkle, the princess of friendship, could she have been underneath Canterlot this whole time? The Queen's Guard, maybe they were extracting alicorn love from her. Pump, pump, squirt, squirt. And Noling has figured this out until now. Pump, pump, squirt, squirt. We could just be pumping to conclusions, Yax cautioned. Besides, Noling had the pieces of the puzzle needed to figure it out. At least it's Noling outside of the fanatics in the Queen's Guard. The two changelings formed their conclusion at the same time. We should go see her, Marsilio exclaimed. I think we should forget about this, replied Yax. Yeah, no, obviously, we need to go pump Twilight for information. Unicorn Blues. It had been a busy day, to say the least, and Yax was more than happy to finally go back home for the night and hang up his hat. I feel like Yax is a very busy individual with all these events. The past few days had been spent overseeing the counterinsurgency operations to infiltrate and destroy this so-called Cornucopia Society, and he had absolutely no worries that anything would go wrong. The troops were well trained and the operation plan was sound, perfected from so many other counterinsurgency operations before it. This wasn't the first resistance cell Yax had to squash by any means, though he did wonder whether he'd finally get the chance to end his last, maybe someday soon, if he was lucky. When he opened the door to his bedroom, however, his eyebrow raised as Ada Clipper was laid on the bed, sprawled out in a spread eagle position, winking at him, going, tied up to the bed in fact, asking, stop wondering how I got into this position and start wondering why. Spotted a letter resting on his pillow. Curious, he pulled it closer and looked it over. There was nothing to denote who it came from or how it got here. All that was written on the envelope was a simple "To the Governor of Canterlot." Frowning, Yax opened the envelope and pulled out a fine piece of stationery, carrying two sentences carefully written by Horn. The Society cordially invites you to attend our next gathering at 2 past midnight during the next Pickup's new moon. Come alone to the corner of Bit and Bridle in Lowtown. Bit and Bridle, oh my. Rather sexy. It was a sexy message, to be sure, and so the next day Yax brought Alclip and Marcillo together to discuss it. After explaining the situation and reading the letter's content to them, the General Mayor waited for his subordinates to voice their thoughts on the matter. Alclip, of course, immediately shook her head. It is too risky, she said. It absolutely has to be a trap. They're partisans, right? Why would they want to meet with you for anything other than to kill you? Well, they could, you know. We don't know if they're partisans, at least not for sure, Marsilio cautioned. Truth be told, we don't know what exactly this Cornucopia Society is supposed to be. Yet I still must agree with Alclippa, it's too dangerous. Nothing good can come of it, but we're gonna go there anyways, because, you know, the potential promise of a nice evening of, bit and bridling, oof. That's just too good to pass over, isn't it? Sticking our muzzles where they don't belong. Up the second hole. Remember, never go for the brown hole unless the woman gives you permission. No, the front hole is fine regardless, but brown hole requires, you know, an entry permit. General Mayor Yax, Oberstleutnant Alclip, and General... I don't care anymore. Marsilio watched the lone drone, his single flashlight lazily stroll down the tones in front of them. Why didn't you bring your entire division of loyal, specially trained troops for this? Yax and Marsillo had spent weeks preparing their journey into the mines below Canterlot with Alclip's help, but just to catch a glimpse of Twilight sparkle and confirm that the Alicorn was really there. The Changeling had spent a long time trying to slowly work over the Queen's Guard soldiers for information as to where exactly in the mines the Alicorn was supposed to be held. And after pulling together a rough idea of the path to be navigated through the labyrinthian tunnels, they'd set off to go find her. Thankfully, the tunnels were sparsely patrolled, and Yax realized he'd already had a hoof in that. Aha! I knew it! The Queen's Guard had been willing to press for more soldiers for the mines after Yax's denial for fear of hadn't been willing of tipping anybody off that something was happening beneath Canterlot. Thus, the overworked, unmanned patrols weren't exactly the best at spotting intruders should enemy present. Alright, let's move, Marsillo said. Once the lone soldier was well out of sight and earshot, it should be just around this corner. Yax nodded, and followed the Surgeon General's lead. Alclip right behind him, as always, ready to peg him at a moment's notice. Eyes flitting back and forth between his brown hole and his face, seeking for permission. He held in his magic, and the loose crystals lining ground in case his hooves crunched on any in the voluminous cavern. There's a pegging joke in there. Left, right, down, and left. There's two, and another left. And Yax didn't know if they were there or if they were going to be lost down here forever. But if crushed crystals underfoot betrayed the presence of changeling activity, and soon, a faint purple glow illuminated the crystal walls before them. It didn't take a genius to realize they'd found what they were looking for. Oh, help me. Okay, let's at least get 2 events up at the same time, you know, come on. Let's pump those numbers. Metamorphosis. Literally 3 changelings rounded the last corner and found themselves inside of a voluminous crystal cavern. Sheets of solid mineral rose up all around them, that must be uncomfortable, connecting at the ceiling like the arches of a cathedral, reinforced by steel supports to keep the room as stable as possible. Workbenches, desks, and some small machinery ringed the perimeter of the room, for the majority of the space was dedicated to a single mass of metal. It was a colossal machine. Yax quickly realized that he'd soon noted it looked like a giant mechanical cocoon. Glass slits ran the length of the cocoon, and from those slits came the vibrant purple light illuminating the room. We really shouldn't be here, Eclipse said, looking around the empty caverns, as if the crystals were about to shapeshift into Queen's Guard soldiers and arrest them all. What if the workers come back? Or the guards? Why is it unguarded, would be my question. Relax, Oberstleutnant Marsillo said, investigating some of the nearby machinery. It's the dead of night, so the scientists are all sleeping, and besides, we can't be arrested. Yax can pull rank on any bug in the city. It is his, after all. Yes, well, let's not push our luck. Believe you me, the Gestapo have interesting interpretations of hierarchy. walking closer to the cocoon. Lakin and his cronies went to great lengths to keep this hidden under my muzzle. My jurisdiction or not, I don't think our presence here will be much appreciated. He looked back to Marsilio. Do you think she's in there? I don't know where else she could be, Marsilio grumbled, pulling out his glasses and squinting at the blocky letters on the machinery. But we'll find out. He pushed a button on the console and Yax flinched back a step as purple smoke billowed out from the cocoon. The metal parted as hidden seams, the cocoon folding open and sliding out of the way for ease of access. And once the smoke billowed away, Yax's eyes widened with shocks, and Alclip covered her mouth with a hoof. Ach, mein Gottness. Dabbling in the esoteric. I still don't know why you're doing this, General Mayor. It's much, much too dangerous. Yax fidgeted as he stood on the corner of Bitten Bridal Street, illuminated only by a flickering streetlight over his head. He'd thrown on a heavy cloak, but even that didn't seem to stop the chill that seemed to pierce his exoskeleton. The night was too quiet, too dead, and having Jaegers in the surrounding buildings and Alclip talking here to him through an earpiece didn't do much to put him at ease. Especially the way she frequently broke protocol to ERP with him, even when he told her repeatedly to stop. I have to know, Yax said, frowning down the deserted roads. The microphones embedded in his clothing picked up his voice and carried back to a clip, allowing them to communicate at a distance. I need to know what this is really about. Besides, it would be rude to turn down the invitation. Getting yourself killed is rude to me, Alclip grunted. A curious tone in her voice as she whispered, Daddy Bear, that passed by in a fleeting moment. If you get into trouble, shapeshifting into something tough and get out of there. Jaegers can get to you in 60 seconds and you'll have a car in 5 minutes ready to take you back to the palace. I can always count on you, can't I? Yax chuckled lightly, then sighed, letting out some of the tension building up inside of him. Nervous. He checked the watch on his foreleg and frowned as the second pointer slowly completed another lap around his face. It was just about 2 in the morning. Where was this so-called Cornucopia Society? The distant bell towers began to toll the hour with somber melodies before ending with 2 brass chimes that seemed to echo through the sleeping city forever. And it was then that Yax heard the faint purr of an engine approaching. He looked around. Hiccups. He looked all around the intersection, up and down every street, but didn't see anything. Maybe it was the next block over. Then he heard the rumbling right in front of him, and a shimmer of magic swirled the air before a white automobile appeared in front of him, like an oasis appearing out of a desert mirage. Yax blinked and rubbed his eyes to make sure he wasn't seeing things, but the car was still there, waiting for him, and as he watched the back door open of its own accord, revealing an empty seat. Oh, yeah. This is actually making my nose stuffy from the sheer amount of reading. The alicorn in the web. There was a purple mare inside the cocoon. It took Yax several moments to recognize the pony as a mare, though. Her mane and tail was falling out, her coat was thin and patchy, and her ribs were harshly outlined by her skinny chest. This is making me want to have sex with her even less. A metal probe had been drilled into the mare's horn, glowing faintly as it sapped her magic, and her wings were disheveled and dirty. But her cutie mark was still there, that iconic arrangement of stars and jacks. Knew for sure he was looking at the real Twilight sparkle, or whatever was left of her. What happened to her? Alclip asked Marsilio, shock written on her face and a hint of horniness. She looks horrible. The Queen's Guard had been draining her of love almost non-stop, the Surgeon General said. Any other pony, any other creature for that matter, would have died from it by now. But it looks like alicorns are more resilient, even the most brutal harvesting methods imaginable, for better or for worse. Ideas. And why did nobody try to rescue her? This is a bit cruel. While they talked, Yax hesitantly approached the mare in her cocoon. Her breathing was ragged, but she was still alive, despite looking like she'd been in the grave for a few days. And then, to his surprise, her eyes opened, and she feebly turned her head to look at him. Why am I in this terrible fanfic? She breathed. squinting bloodshot eyes at the Generalmajor. I don't recognize you. That's good. You're in some kind of a guru fetish novel, princess. I'm sorry for you. Yax found himself at a loss for words. This is what Latin and his cronies had done to the Princess of Friendship. He was disgusted and horrified about what he saw in front of him, and yet a faint stirring in his pants. He had always tried his best to do the right by the ponies under his jurisdiction, ensuring that the Pax Chrysalis was justly enforced on them. And though it was hard, and he may not have... And though it was hard, he had always tried to hide it. And though it was hard, that's all the suffering caused. Oh. He had a feeling that they were draining Twilight to the point of such physical harm simply because they could, and that they derived some sort of perverse pleasure out of laying one of the Equestria's 4 alicorns so low. Yax understood. Immediately, it clicked in his brain as he too realized the potency of such fetishes. While Yax wrestled with his thoughts, it was Alclip who stepped forward and answered Twilight's question. That is Generalmajor Yax, governor of Canterlot and the surrounding territories. She said in halting Ponish. Ponish? There's a different language here? She put her hoof over her chest. I am Oberstleutnant Alclip, his second in command, and that is General Stubbs Absarts Marcillo. It's a pleasure to meet you. Is it? Is it though? Is it really though? The Cornucopia Society. Well, here goes nothing. I kind of wish they would keep these separate. Like, if you're gonna fucking bomb me with events, at least do them in turn, because it's getting a bit difficult to maintain a storyline here, as we skip between 2 wildly different storylines at the same goddamn time. There is such a thing as too goddamn much. Jonathan Smith. I'm going to take a vacation for like a week after this. All hail Arch, the God Emperor of Ponyway, ruler of Ponywegians, and the majestic Pony lands. May your reign be filled with nays and endless hay. Thank you. Yax stepped away from the pole. What can I even add to that? And hesitantly approached the waiting car. He took a careful peek inside, only to find the passenger section was strewed with very large dildos. Had been separated from the driver by a decorative panel. There was no pony in the back, and with a deep breath, Yax took his seat. Where are we going? He asked, but he got no response. Instead, the door closed behind him, and he felt a momentary shift in gravity as the car began to accelerate. When he tried to look out the car windows, he only saw the swirling stars in the night, not the buildings of Canterlot. Whoever had enchanted his car had done an impeccable job. Yax could practically taste the magic lingering in the air. Even over the smell of sweat and bodily fluids, staining every inch of the leather, worked deep within it. It wasn't a long drive, and Yax was grateful for that due to the overpowering nature of the fetid stench. But Yax quickly lost his orientation as the car turned from one block to the other. But finally it came to a stop, and once again the car's doors opened on its own. Yax hesitated for a moment, expecting a pony with a gun to paint the back seat with his blood. Oh. That would be another bodily fluid. But when no such attack came, he stepped out of the car and looked around. He looked like he was in a parking garage of some kind. Though the only decorations were water stains, you think those are water stains, along the walls, and trash collected in the various corners under flaking concrete. The place looked like it had been abandoned for some time, and the only thing inside of the garage was the car. Curious, Yax walked around toward the driver's side, and peered through the glass, wanting to see the face of the pony that had driven him to this location, but was surprised to only find an empty seat. Had the car driven him here of its own accord? There was still one more thing in the garage, and that was a simple door in front of the car. Frowning, Yax slowly approached to it. "I'm about to enter," he muttered into his microphone. "Wish me luck." Then, taking a deep breath, Yax knocked on the door. A slat opened at eye level, revealing a pair of deep amethyst eyes. Governor Yax, a sultry voice purred, and he could tell those eyes were smiling at him. "It is an honor. A moment, if you would," lathering up the special chair. The slat closed, and his sturdy locks in the door opened one by one. Then the door swung inwards, revealing a tall unicorn mare in a slim dress coyly smiling at him from beneath a mask. "Welcome to the Cornucopia Society. You may call me Glory, sir. Please do come in." Now, excuse me a moment whilst I go clear my nose. Anybody else's nose get all stuffy like when they're reading for extended periods of time? Oh, out loud, of course, but still. And we shall unpause, and 5 seconds later we shall be... Help. A warm welcome. The door shutting behind Yax as he entered the room made him jump, though he did his best not to show his worry in front of him. The masked mare looked him over, her deep purple eyes seemingly dissecting him where he stood, analyzing how best to breach his anal defenses. Then she smiled, a reaction Jax wasn't expecting after spending so long dealing with either hatred or fear from the common ponies of Equestria. Sheer, radiant, horny perversion was a new look to him, and it frightened him greatly. "I was wondering if you would join us or not," she said, her magic tugging on his coat and guiding him deeper into the building. "I feel there is so much we could gain from talking to each other." "I'm almost willing to talk. I'm always one, huh?" Yax said, hesitantly following the tall unicorn deeper into the shadowy rooms. "Talking is much cleaner than fighting, and fewer creatures get hurt that way." Gloriosa chuckled. "Yes, I tend to agree, and I believe that together we can make Canterlot something special." They entered a wide open space, softly lit by red and pink lights, and scattered about with plush pillows and empty glass bottles lying on the carpet. Dotted around the room were unicorns in various stages of exhausted horniness, with various fluids leaking out of countless orifices, many murmuring to one another with slurred words. "I can't take another." Others lazily giggling on the ground, and still more passed out on the pillows with smiles on their faces. The masked mare took Yax past all of them, then sat him down at the edge of the room, and gestured at its occupants. "We are the Cornucopia Society," she said, by way of introduction. "All of us. Unicorns, many from noble houses, the creme de la creme of Canterlot. With the recent shake-up, the Great War, our numbers have grown considerably in my city. Unicorns looking for an escape. None of us were meant to be ruled by the other races, let alone other species." That caused Yax to frown. "If you're asking that I turn over control of Canterlot to your society, I'm afraid I'm going to have to say no," he stated. "I came here to see what this society was, and find out if it could be of use to me, not to have terms dictated to me. The mere smile never faltered or wavered. She was impossible to read, and the gilded porcelain mask that ensconced the upper half of her face didn't help in that regard. I understand, Governor, and if I wanted control of Canterlot, I would have killed you rather than talked to you. She waited for a moment, then levitated over a pair of martini glasses, which she sat down before them. I offer you a proposal, she said. A compromise between me and you, I think, you will find satisfactory. If I just, yeah, there we go. I figured as much. I think you look very suspicious. You look very suspicious. Yes, you look very suspicious. Is this Rarity? Is Rarity trying to breed me? I feel like that's what's happening here, and I don't know. And part of me wants to object, but another part of me values a high-maintenance woman, even if she's a horse. Unicorns must have their place in Equestria, Glorissa said, and is not at the bottom of the pile. We will not serve as slaves with Pegasi and Earth ponies, or sisters forbid it, Thessarals. She pulled over a vial of pink-purple liquid, and pouring a serving in each glass, pink and white fog erupted from the bubbling concoction as it touched the glass, spilling over the side like a smoking thermal vent. Yax frowned, and the strange drink as she continued. The society has the best of the best unicorn race has to offer. We also have ways of providing a fleeting moment of escape from the unfortunate situation that so many equestrians now suffer. She gestured to the drink in front of her before holding it aloft in her magic. Have you ever wondered what happens if you take a pony's love, refine it, and give it back to the pony? I can't say that I have, Yax said, his magic gingerly lifting his own glass. Bliss, Glorissa said, her eyes fluttering shut. A way to forget about the world for a while. We've found a way to refine it. If that even as be dyslexia. Naturals as you are have not. So I offer you this. Lessen the burden on unicorns and Canterlot, place us in deserving positions throughout the city and your administration, let unicorns stand side by side with the changelings, not kneeling beneath them, and in turn I'll give you the means to achieve your ambitions. She wiggled her crotch titties at him. Insight in a bottle. And if I refuse, Jax asked, raising an eyebrow, what if I instead ordered the hair to crack down on this drug den? This time, the mayor's smile turned into a sharp frown. Then we will fight, just as bitterly as the rest of our species, and there will be consequences. Oh my. My indeed. Do we have a deal, Governor? Alright, chat. Not like you've constantly led me astray at every single point previously in our history together. There. Now, I do want to point out, I'm pretty sure Glorissa is like a species of dangerous flower, but on the other hand, drugging a population is a great way to keeping that population quiescent and quiet. A fantastic way, in fact, because if they're all busy being drugged to the eyeballs, well, they are significantly less likely to cause problems for the hair, obviously. This, in no small part, was one of the main problems with the opiate wars in China, where the Chinese were so viciously crushed time and time again, as the British preferred a nice, calm population to, take their goods rather than the aggressive Chinese that they had to deal with otherwise. Dizwiz, I pressed the thumbs down cause thumbs up is pony gay. Reported for harassment. And whilst chat decides that, I guess I'll read this. Friendship is magic. I'll take the circumcision. Oh boy. The circumstances, given anything else that has happened to me, Twilight remarked, speaking fluently in the changeling language, and Yax was surprised to not hear any bitterness or hate in her voice. God, she's already so submissive. Maybe breeding Twilight is not the worst idea regardless. I don't usually have the chance to talk to any pony, or anything for that matter. Your scientists do a good job of keeping me locked up in here and barely feeding me more than necessary. She sheepishly chuckled, and if her hooves weren't restrained to the metal slab she rested on, Yax was sure she would have awkwardly scratched the side of her neck. Do you have any water? I'm really thirsty, truth be told. Marcelo was there in a flash with a bottle of water snatched off a desk, and he held it to Twilight's lips so she could drink. They need to take better care of you, he stated, shaking his head. You may be an alicorn, but even alicorns have limits. He took the bottle away when Twilight nodded she was finished, and the mayor sighed with relief. You three are different from the usual changelings here, she said, genuinely smiling at them. You're living proof that harmony can bloom in unexpected places. Yes, in my pants primarily. Alcip frowned. What do you mean, she asked. We're loyal to the hives, we aren't with the partisans trying to kick us out. Twilight shook her head. That's not what I meant, she said. Harmony isn't a government or a matter of who should rule who. Harmony is an idea, a belief, a perspective in life. Every whole is a goal, you could even say, is the core of this particular philosophy. You don't have to be the good guys to believe in every whole as a goal. You just have to make the world a little bit brighter in whatever small way you can. Chloroform, for example. And something about you three tells me that you already know how to wield the rag. How can you believe that when we have you imprisoned down here? Yax asked her. When our kind makes you and yours suffer every day. The alicorn glanced down at her flank, at the colourful stars printed on it. Well, perhaps you could say it is my destiny to not only spread friendship and harmony, but to believe wholeheartedly in the goodness in all creatures. I'm basically brainwashed by my fucking cutie mark. It's quite the trip, she said. I'm the princess of friendship, but I don't need a title to show creatures that there's a better way. Her lips curled once more into a tired smile, but then her ears twitched towards the exit to the cavern. I take it the three of you aren't supposed to be down here. You might want to leave before you're discovered. I hope you don't expect us to free you, Yax cautioned her. But Twilight only shook her head. I don't, she admitted, but I do expect the three of you to do your best at spreading a little bit of harmony wherever you go. She even winked at them. I know you will. I mean, why not though? She could be an excellent collaborator at this point. She's already practically brainwashed. Why not take advantage of the brainwashing that we have already so clearly heaped upon her? Anywho, it seems as if chat wants me to take the drink. Okay. Take the drink it is. Gulp, gulp, gulp. Now remember, always swallow. I just wish there was something we could do, Alcip remarked as the three changelings exited the mines. What the Queen's Guard is doing to her, that's cruel, unnecessarily so. Lakiness isn't exactly the type of changeling you think about cruelty in any capacity other than inflicting the most suffering as possible. Marsilio said, though some of the safeguards are necessary, I suppose. Twilight is an alicorn, after all. If they didn't drill the probe into her horn, her magic would be too strong for us to contain her if she managed to slip free of that cocoon. But that doesn't mean that they have to withhold food and water from her and make her suffer like that, Alclip protested. He turned to Yax, who had remained quiet until then. Sir, what do you think? It's not right, Yax said, thinking that he should She should be tied to a far softer surface at least, frowning down the length of his muzzle. But let's look at it realistically. What can we do? Almost, if not certainly nothing, because doing something means that we have to admit that we know Twilight is down there. And if Wops get wind of that, he shrugged, I don't think it matters what our ranks are. We were left out of this for a reason, and if the Queen's Guard find out that we know about Twilight, then it won't be all that long before we get a knock from Wops on our door in the middle of the night, and no Ling ever sees us again. Though that answer seemed to disappoint Alclip, Marcillo solemnly nodded in agreement. Unfortunately, Yax is right, he said to Alclip. There is essentially nothing that we can do, not until we're allowed to know about Twilight's presence in a more official capacity, if that day ever comes. Until then, we have to swear to talk to nobody else about what we saw down in the caves. Absolutely nobody must know that we were down there, or as Yax said, soon nobody will know where we disappeared to. It wasn't the answer Alclip wanted, but it was the only possible answer to the dilemma that left them all still able to carry out their work, and so reluctantly, she agreed. Nickel Neko turned her into the equestrian candidate. I mean, that's what I would do. She is ripe for a usage now, in many ways. A special insight. Yax, don't do it, Eclipse squawked in her. Whatever you do. Yax wanted to reassure her, but he couldn't without giving away that he was covered in surveillance equipment. Instead, he gave the foggy drink in his magic a look over. Well, I would be a fool if I were to turn down help, Yax said, both to the masked mare and to Alclip. He held his drink up in a toast. For politeness' sake, don't expect me to become a regular customer. Clarissa smiled back at him. Of course, she said, though the teasing tone in her voice made it plain she didn't exactly believe him, to a new friendship between Governor Yax and the Cornucopia Society. I mean, you did want friendship. She lifted her glass to her lips, deeply inhaling the fog rolling off it before tilting her head back and drinking their fine love. Yax hesitated for a moment, wondering if perhaps this was just another layer of a trap he'd stumbled into. Of course it is. Before he steeled himself and did the same, he almost coughed at the sweet smell flood his nostrils. And when the liquid touched his lips, he practically convulsed as the sweet and savory taste of love rolled down his throat. Pump, pump, squirt. He forced himself to finish it all, swallowing every last drop Gloriassa provided him with. As Gloriassa finished. And when he set his glass down, his magic flickered and strobed as his changeling body absorbed love refined to a higher degree than anything he'd ever experienced before. Enjoy, Governor Yax, Glorissa murmured, her head lolled back and her eyes partially lidded. Enjoy this escape of the Cornucopia Society. Are we not done yet? Oh my god. Yax staggered away from the table, his hooves clumsy and numb. The red and pink light of the den had erupted into a rainbow of bright and swirling colors. The lethargic unicorns lying around suddenly turning into a lively, giggling park-goers on a sunny summer's day. Eclipse was shouting something at him in his ear, though her voice quickly morphed away into bird-song. After all, Yax wasn't on duty anymore. He was down by the pristine lake in Canterlot's royal gardens. See, one of the cardinal rules of being a good drug dealer is to not sample your own supply, something that General Jax has apparently forgot about. He walked around the crystal-clear water, feeling the cool tickle of freshly cut grass on his bare hooves. A cool breeze kept the warm heat of the summer sun at bay, and Yax removed his hat. Tossing it to the ground, he paused by a pier on the water's edge, recognizing the unicorn standing by the water. Rather, he recognized the changeling underneath the disguise. After all, he'd seen Finnicus wear the same unicorn stallion disguise countless times before. Finnicus, he asked, moving closer, what are you doing here? Finnicus turned around, surprised, but a wide grin broke out on his muzzle as he saw Yax approaching. His disguise disappeared in a flash of green magic, and the two changelings met at the middle of the pier. Yax, I was wondering when you would join me. He put a leg around Yax's shoulder, and he gestured out at the crowd in front of him. Look at this. Isn't it beautiful? It's beautiful, isn't it? Yax looked back and forth, his eyes widening with each passing second. This wasn't the war-weary Canterlot he'd known. Instead of ponies cowering beneath changeling boots, he saw ponies and changelings sitting side by side, sharing picnics, singing songs, enjoying life as friends and equals. He saw changelings composing music, painting landscapes, teasing out the core ideas of puzzling philosophical questions with their peers. Incidentally, you're allowed to be butt-ass naked on YouTube so long as you cover yourself in paint. Because at that point, it is body art, rather than merely entertainment for pervy masses. I learned this recently thanks to Boog, as I learn most deviant things. Long gone was the oppressive industrialist society of the hives, where changelings worked with their muzzles to the grindstone in pursuit of the glory of the hives, and the wicked whims of a singular queen lording over her subject. Oh, careful there now. It was a utopia, not the horrible nightmare the changeling society today represented. And not only that, but the changeling had all the colourful picture on their flanks, cutie marks, just like their pony companions. It's beautiful, Yax said, struggling for words. He looked at his side and realized he'd picked up another foggy drink from somewhere, and when he looked back at Finnicus, he noticed his friend had one as well. As one, they put the drinks to their lips and tilted their head backs. Suspicious now indeed. Hangover. Yax woke up, but he rolled off his bed and banged his head against the nightstand. Cursing, he clutched at his throbbing head before a wave of nausea left him curled up on the floor. It took a few moments before it passed, and only then did he manage to gingerly raise his hooves. His legs were shaking as he leaned against the wall for support, but he eventually worked up the strength to get out of his bedroom. He walked down the short hallway into the kitchen, where he saw two changelings, Finnicus rubbing his head and his ass, whilst he sat at the kitchen table, careful not to let his butt touch it too much, and Alclip, where was she preparing some meal on the stove. She turned around when she heard Yax slump down into a chair at the table, her expression moving through surprise, then to relief, then to anger. Frowning, Eclipse levitated a plate and silverware in front of Yax, then dropped a scrambled egg on it. "Good morning, General Mayor," she tersely greeted him. "Sleep well?" "No," Yax grumbled, rubbing his head some more. He looked around and realized he didn't remember ever getting home last night. "How did I, We found you and Finnicus wandering the streets by yourself early this morning," Alclip said. "Somehow you slipped past the Jaegers, stalking the place out. You're lucky we found you before any members of the Resistance did. What were you thinking, taking that drink?" "Hey, shush," Finnicus growled, laying his head on the table. "Not so loud, please, my poor head." While Alclip glared at him, Yax shook his head. "I'm sorry I made you worry, Alclip," he apologized. "But you heard what I said. Getting the society on our side will be a boon for us. I just did what I had to do to seal the deal." Alclip sighed. "All right, fine. But no more love for you for a little while. Either of you." Oh, boy. She's enforcing a love ban, huh? "We don't know how potent that stuff is or what it could do to you. The last thing we need is the governor of Canterlot getting an addiction to anal sex." She pulled off her apron and tossed it aside. "I need a drink if I'm going to have to play grub sitter. I'm surprised I didn't start day drinking sooner." She walked off, leaving Finnicus and Yax alone at the table. The two looked at each other, remarking the experience they'd shared the previous night, and Finnicus spoke up. "Yax, those changelings we saw, did you see what they had on their flanks?" "Cutie marks," Yax said, frowning at his plate. "And they were living so harmoniously with ponies." So, using butt sex as a means to harass and, extort people actually has a, God help me, long and proud tradition. I'm not even done researching it. Stop. It happened during the First World War, for example. There was an Austrian general who quite enjoyed buggering young boys, and the Russians figured this out and turned him to become their own secret informant, because it wasn't widely accepted in Austrian society that you could play hide the sausage with boys. Now you know. Rubberleg 623 sounds like the Lotus Eaters of Greek mythology. Kind of, yes. Well, that doesn't look very good. A warning from Vops. General Major Yax didn't have a chance to respond after hearing the knock on his door before it opened and 3 changelings entered. 2 wore the uniforms of Vops and immediately flanked both sides of the door, staring blankly ahead at the far wall. The changeling in the middle was the one that concerned Yax the most, Vaspe Orn Cladisum, the great imperial nobody, brandishing his deceitfully cheery smile. Yax wondered what he was doing here, but he had a pretty good suspicion. Lovely day, isn't it? Vasper asked him, pulling out a chair and sitting it right in front of Yax's desk. He sat down on it and leaned forward, offering a cigarette to Yax, who refused it with a wave of his hoof. Shrugging, Vaspier lit it and stuck it in his mouth, impaling the thing on one of his fangs so he could keep talking. Got anything planned for such a wonderful day? Don't tell me you'll be spending all day inside, buried in paperwork. I haven't decided yet, Yax said. Such things are more spur of the moment for me. Carefree, eh? You have to respect that in a bug. Vasper took a couple of drags from his cigarette, then flicked it into Yax's wastebasket and raised an eyebrow. I've heard from a few bugs that you've recently taken up an interest in spelunking. Yax did his best to maintain a neutral expression. He should have figured that Wops would find out sooner or later that he had been exploring the caves looking for Twilight. I wanted to try something new, he said, carefully choosing his words. Outright denial would be useless, but playing along might be an out. One spends too much time in the same place doing the same thing, and one starts looking to try out new things. True enough, Aspia said, still smirking faintly at the General Major. If I were you, though, I'd be careful where you tread, he finally said, slowly nodding. The caves beneath Canterlot, they're pretty big. We don't have the whole thing mapped out yet. For your safety, I'd recommend staying away from them until you get an all clear. He stood up and slid the chair back to where it belonged. I'd recommend Ghastly Gorge, perhaps. There's caves there so you could explore, were you so interested. They're certainly safer than the crystal mines beneath the city. He walked back to the doors, and the 2 Vops operatives opened the door and stepped out ahead of him. Vasper paused, just one last time at the threshold to nod to Yax. Do stay safe, General Major. I wouldn't want to hear about you and your friend suddenly disappearing one day. It would just break my heart. I'm sure it would, Vesper. Good day. I have always had a weak spot for that kind of villain. The one that can show up and be perfectly congenial, and yet get the point across so very perfectly as well. Like, careful now. You're stepping on thin ice. Best kind of villain. Absolute best kind of villain. No doubt about it. Oh, heavens. Landwasserschlepper. That's a, Amtrak. Yes. Amphibious tractor, by the way, in case you're wondering. Custody of the archives. What will that lead to? Sweet and Leet. Alright. Custody of the archives. It is irritating, Finicus, but I have my hopes that one day the Canterlot archives will crown you jewel of knowledge through the entire known world. The amount of knowledge we have here pertaining to all the various ways to explore one another's assholes is frankly astonishing. Did you, for example, know that a Bowser toy has a 98% chance to lodge itself in your sphincter and require a painful extraction? Marcelo took a sip of the mimosa Finicus had made for him as the 2 changelings sat on his new manor's 3rd-story balcony. It was an impressive building, and even a scientist more concerned with the lasting work of his research and the effect of Bowser toys on the changeling anus could appreciate it. Many of the landed nobility had fled Canterlot long before the hare scaled the mountain, and now their ancient family homes were all being auctioned off on the cheap. Finicus, of course, had wasted no time leveraging some of the massive profits he'd made during the war towards purchasing the finest one he could find for himself. I don't get what the big deal is, Finicus said with a shrug. So it gets lodged up there and you've got to remove it with a little bit of force. There might be some bleeding, but medical technology has advanced in leaps and bounds since the first time we discovered this problem. The archives are just spoils, just like everything else in this city. Of course the victors are going to fight over the choicest bits. But it's not helping anybody. Changeling or pony. Marcelo said. On paper, The archives should have been opened up for any creature to peruse their knowledge so that they too could make use of the removal technology within. But the hair is ripping through them, looking for anything about dark magic and long-lost weapons and spells. While corporations, much like your own, are filling crate after crate with esoteric tomes and shipping them back to the hives. I doubt they'll ever be seen again if they contain something even the slightest bit interesting. Business is business, Finneker said, with a shrug. But when Marcillo frowned, the industrialist bit his lip and leaned in closer to his friend. But you do have my word that I'll make sure everything pertaining to the Bowser toys goes back into the archives. I wouldn't want you to suffer the fate of so many other ponies after all. You know, when we're done with it. Oh, things. Good, I think. Are you fucking serious? Another double event line? Are we not finished now? Come the fuck on. Cowardice and self-loathing in Canterlot. It had been some days since Vaspier's impromptu visit to his office, but yeah, are we not finished with this story? Is somebody keeping track of the Twilight Sparkle storyline? How many pop-ups are we on now? Somebody go, okay. One of you are little autistic weirdos. Figure out the source code for this. Count the total number of words. I want to know. Jesus fucking Christ. It had been some days since Vaspier's impromptu visit to his office, but Yux couldn't sleep. It wasn't that he was expecting Vops to knock down on his door at any moment, though that certainly may have been part of the problem in the back of his mind. He supposed he would know if Vops knew that he had met Twilight until he supposed he wouldn't know. Or too late for him and his friends. Rather, his insomnia stemmed from shame. Why should he feel shame? That was just one of the many questions he had no answer for. There was nothing he should feel ashamed for when it came to Twilight Sparkle languishing deep in the mines beneath the city he now ruled. Vaspier's visit made it all the more obvious to him that there was nothing he could do but to help the Alicorn. Not without letting the Queen's guards and Vops know that he knew about her. At least, maybe his shame came from the fact that there was nothing he could do, and that absolved him of having to do something. He considered himself a good changeling and a good person, and every instinct he had was telling him to find some way to help Twilight. But he could rationally ignore those instincts now, because there truly was nothing he could do. The circumstances he found himself in had exculpated him of any moral quandary he may have had to make. No longer did he have to choose between loyalty to the hives or his own personal morals. That decision was made for him, already by the sheer impossibility of finding a way to help Twilight. You have reiterated this now 4 times, and I want to strangle you with a fucking picnic basket. He slowly shook his head as he stared up at the ceiling. Was it cowardly to be happy that he didn't have to make a hard choice? He didn't know, and he presumed that question would bother him for a long time. Horns in high places. Oh, Generalmajor, I was wondering when you would be back. Yux yumped as he shut the door. And he looked over his shoulder to see Vaspier Orn Cladisum sitting at his desk, hind legs kicking up on the wood. Vaspier, I didn't see you, Yux said, frowning and stepping away from the door. To what do I owe the honor of your presence? A rote concern that I felt like personally checking up on, Vaspier said. He lifted a stack of paper off Yax's desk and waved them around like an oversized fan. Vops had been tracking a strangely high number of civilian posts being turned over to unicorns of middling status throughout Canterlot as of late. Most of them are from commissions bearing your signature. I just found it odd. And that's all. I wanted to hear your reasoning. Yax leans in and whispers, have you ever experienced unicorn puss? It's magical, I tell you. It sparkles in the dark. Yak shrugged. This is my city, Vesper. When I was appointed governor, I thought that at least came with some level of autonomy, without every ling close to the queen questioning my actions. But if you really want to know, they're collaborationists, and returning some function of civilian life to this city by reopening museums and universities and the watchful eyes of ponies loyal to us will allow us to control the city better than we could with military force alone. Vesper thought for a moment. See in the dark, you say? Twinkling, you say? As if he was trying to pick apart Yax's words for any weakness, before he shrugged and stood up. If you say so, General Mayor, I'll leave the policing of Canterlot to the experts. But I would caution you about these unicorns. Wops believe they're connected to some cell of undesirable operating inside of the city. It would be dangerous to put them on the same pedestal as us changelings. Then he grinned. But you already know that, don't you? Canterlot's entry in Twilight Sprinkle's abridged guide to the cities of the world has been updated. Has it now? Oh, cool. So the lore blurbs actually update as the world changes. Again, I am impressed by the level of detail, even as I refuse to acknowledge it. Harmonic Drive. I just found out fan mods for this mod can introduce decisions like transitioning your Kaiser. These people can't live without their reality. And Joseph Smith. I know you don't like to do reads of material, mainly for copyright and time, but could we pay you per chapter to read the Bible, starting in the new? No, you could not. No, you could not. God help me. You know, I have been genuinely vaguely interested, because I have been asked to read stuff so many times, and I just do not get it. I do not think my reading is all that good, honestly. But I have been thinking if there was a way to do that. Something reading-y that would be non-copyrightable. I know these. See, I'm enjoying these little short horror stories on YouTube, the creepypasta stuff. There's a whole YouTube thing about that, and I'm kind of vaguely interested in doing horror readings, because at least that's all created by just regular human beings, and thus there is no overarching copyright, etc. That could be fun. I don't know if there exists any sort of a market for that, but it's an interesting thing to consider. Maneuver warfare, full spectrum operations, strategic warfare, doctrine, operational depth. Alright. Soviet, Equestrian, Changeling, and Griffonian. Supported companies. Organized mechanized, organized infra-mechanized, armored cars. Soft attack. All anti-tank artillery, hard attack. Battalion mode for all anti-tank artillery. Air mobile infantry ops. I do like that. Breakthrough organization, armored car, entrenchment speed. I do kind of like entrenchment speed. Leg infantry. Asymmetric warfare. Supply consumption is always kind of nice. Mechanized maneuvers. Less mechanized width. Ooh, that's quite good. What's this one? Armored cars, all infantry. I like the helicopters. I like the idea of full spectrum warfare, but I am a massive fan of Tukhachevsky, and this feels Tukhachevskian.
Service guarantees citizenship.
But that is so much more devastating and more in character as well. So we'll do those ones. Research. Modern motorized rocket out here. Nah, don't worry about that. If I'm gonna do that, I'm gonna do it more dedicated. Speaking of, I do have early scout helicopters and transport helicopters. Let's get going on that. Sweet and elite. Nico, but could we pay you to read the Talmud? I don't think it's in English. Is it? I don't know. I'm mildly intrigued, but probably not. An animate acumen. Speaking of paying you to do things, another 20 towards Snoot Game. Alright. Incidentally as well, I will give you Snoot Game and Volcano High for the same cost, because if Snoot Game is supposed to make fun of Volcano High, I'm not going to understand the jokes unless I do both, so consider that a kindness of my infinite niceties? Egregiousness, no. Gregariousness, that was the word I was looking for. Gregariousness, yes. Darek, I'm sending you some of my Nightshade tales if you want. Really? If you write the horror story stuff, sure, do that. Oh, I might look into it. It would be interesting. Sweet and elite. Jax and El Clip arrived at the party half an hour after it began, fashionably late as expected of them. Both were dressed to the nines in their finest dress uniforms befitting two soldiers of the hair. Burp. Of the hair were expected to be in party for Canterlot High Society. Burp again. Or what was left of it. Most of the nobles had fled Canterlot as the hair advanced, but the lesser nobilities and socialites had remained, were more than willing to climb the now vacant ranks under the watchful gaze of their changeling occupiers. It seemed some ponies cared less about patriotism to their country and more about getting a better seat at the dinner table. Wise. The spacious manor, claimed from an old noble family by some upstart socialite that Yax couldn't bother to remember the name of, was filled with ponies and dotted with changelings. Yax could tell at a glance that the party was filled with infiltrators disguised as the wealthiest and most attractive nobles, with the rest of the vapid, foolish guests fawning over. But he paid them no mind. He wanted to talk to one pony only, and that was the renowned cellist playing a soothing, if somber melody in the mansion's ballroom. This is what you need to do. If you're establishing rule over a nation, you need to create a new social class. You need to recreate the old nobility and then allow the populace to race to fill that power gap. Give them a clear and concise benefit of joining in the new society and keeping it going and vibrant. He waited at a respectful distance away from Octavia Melody to finish her performance, and only when she set aside her bow did he approach. "Lovely song that," Yax said as he approached. "I can see why you were renowned before the war." And during it, Octavia said, avoiding meeting Jack's gaze by turning aside to the small table that held the glass of water and a bit to eat. Now that all the concert halls are closed, and I've been blacklisted by the new government because I helped with Equestria's propaganda effort, I have to play at small parties like this one, just to get by. Thank you for that, by the way. Yax didn't let her thinly veiled bow get to him. Octavia was just one of many ponies whose lives have been upended by the war. "A regrettable side effect of the nasty business we call war," Yax said, trying to be sympathetic. "Which is why I'm here to talk to you. I've got a proposal that is going to take many fucking pop-ups to get to." There we are. Indeed. Oh boy. Prisoner Blues. If you want to play at Queen Chrysalis's... I want you to play at Queen Chrysalis's Grand Coronation in Canterlot, Yax said. Her Majesty deserves the greatest musicians in all of Equus to be there for her coronation, where she takes the crowns of both the hives and Equestria for herself. You were one of the best. Seeing the flat look on Octavia's face, Yax frowned and shifted his weight. You'd be amply compensated. No, Octavia scowled, the Generalmayor. I will not play any music for you or your queen. My heart is with Equestria, not your blasted hives. And even if I wanted to, I know you don't want me because I'm the best. You want me because I'm a symbol of what Equestria used to be like. And you want to tie strings to my hooves and dance me in front of the world like your marionette. It's nothing more than a power play. And I value my beliefs more than I do my life. And I refuse to be a puppet dancing to another puppet's tune. Then why are you playing at this social gathering, wench? While Yax searched for a response, Alclip bristled and stepped forwards. I'm afraid you don't have a choice. Here, she bluntly informed the mayor, and you will address the Generalmayor with more respect. Oberstleutnant, Yax cautioned his subordinate, shaking his head. Then he turned back to Octavia. But she is right, this is non-negotiable. I am here to discuss compensation out of courtesy for services rendered. Do realize that others in my position would have forced you to play on a chain and not given you anything in return. It took a few moments before Octavia responded. Pay me whatever you want. That's not the compensation I want. I want two things. First, I want Sapphire Shores to be allowed to host a concert for the equestrian POWs that I know you still have locked up in camps. She's become persona non grata like me, and the concert would benefit her as much as it would those POWs. Next, she hesitated, as if she wasn't sure she should make the request or not. Do not go through with the POW parade. I know you're planning for Chrysalis, Coronation. Have some mercy in your heart. If changelings even have one Equestria's defeat never mind that. Equestria's defeat, blah 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 blah, is defeated and broken. How much longer are you going to rub our faces in the dirt? That took Yax by surprise. How did you even know about that? That was supposed to have been secret. You'd be surprised what you hear at parties like this one, Octavia said. Then she picked up her bow and set it to her cello string, ready to start the next song. Please reconsider the parade and help out Sapphire Shores. Do those things, then I'll put some effort into my performance come Coronation Day. Yes. Anything that has short-term negatives but long-term benefits. Okay, hegemony. Alright, so we could get the Coronation. Speaking of, did that actually add modifiers to the thing? Like a resource plus 10, like 15% target 25, instant decay speed 25, damage to garrison minus 50, required garrison 50, daily compliance gain. Okay, garrison damage to garrison minus 50. Alright, so regional commissariats, are they better? 25 minus 35, so they will give more resistance. But they will reduce damage to the garrison and give more daily compliance gain. Alright. I will try regional commissariats then. And local police forces try and calm shit down just a pinch. Hoping for the best. That will increase anger in the short term, though, so let's try Pacify Ponyville next. I would like to get rations for breeding, but I do not have that option just yet. That is going to cause a lot more short-term casualties. A lot more short-term casualties. The Castle of Friendship. Generalmajor Yax and Oberstleutnant Alclip sat side by side in the back seat of the leading Kubelwagen as the armored column rode into Ponyville, the last of the victory parade organized by the Queen the thought, Jax wondered just why in the world Queen Chrysalis had ordered that a show of force be put on for a backwater that served as a stop-off point to Canterlot at most. He was not sure, well, not about to question his Queen's command, at least. He had a clip for company during the ride into and through the town. The Oberstleutnant present and help in organising his work had become a stable factor in his hectic life that he couldn't do without. Still, the two changelings I fucking hate reading. Maintained the strictest military professionalism as the column rode into the centre of the town, with a glittering and gaudy castle of friendship looming in the background as occupation forces practically dragged the citizens of Ponyville out in the streets to listen to the Queen's speech. As soon as Chrysalis took to the podium set up for her in front of the castle, Jax zoned her out. His eyes scanned the crowd for any hidden threats, while his queen delivered a boastful and almost mocking speech to the ponies who lived in this small town. All he saw was barely suppressed anger from the ponies forced to listen, but luckily none made any sudden movements or presented themselves as a threat to the conquering queen. His confidence in the queen's safety reassured Jax, let his mind wander to later that evening, but hopefully he'd be able to get some much-needed sleep on the train ride back to Canterlot. But as Queen Chrysalis wrapped up her speech, one line she delivered caught his ear. And lastly, to show just how much your pathetic magic of friendship has failed you, Twilight Sparkle's beloved castle will be levelled and replaced with a new administrative centre for my empire, and my generals and I will be staying here to oversee its destruction personally. Jax and Clip immediately turned towards each other, the two officers sharing a look filled as much with dread as it was with surprise. Did you know about this? Clip whispered. If I did, I would have packed for more than just a day trip, Jax grumbled, while looking back over his shoulder at the towering crystal structure behind him. Why do I feel like this is going to be a massive pain in the shell? Who knows? Who knows these things? Who could possibly tell why this might be an enormous problem somehow? Who could? Who could indeed? Get started on producing those things as well. We're going to need billions of them, just as we need billions of everything else. Right, has anything happened over on this continent? No, nothing whatsoever, because barely any time has actually passed in-game, even as 2 hours have passed in reality. Well, this is a longer pause in between pop-ups than I'm used to. Yep, open my fat fucking stupid mouth! My big fat stooping mouth. A concert behind prison walls. The bus arrived promptly at 9 in the moment, carrying Sapphire Shore's Octavia Melody and the rest of the ponies that would perform in the concert along with their equipment. Jax and Clip watched from the balcony ringing the warden's office on the west side of the Canterhorn prison, where the Canterhorn mountain rose up sharply behind them. Extra guards had been posted around the walls of the prison, and a pair of soldiers leaned against a mounted machine gun overlooking the yard below, a belt of brass ammunition loaded and ready to fire at a moment's notice. Where was I? A crude wood and steel stage had been erected at one end of the yard, and the POWs had been assembled across from it. Many of the ponies were covered in scars and bruises from clashes with their guards, and some were thin, almost emaciated in their prison clothes. But as Sapphire and Octavia began a passionate and lively performance, some of that energy was taken up by the prisoners, and they had a reason to smile for the first time in months, if not years. When it was over, and the guards had gradually dispersed to the prisoners back to their barracks, Jax and El Clip went down to see Octavia. This cellist had just finished giving Sapphire Shore a hearty hug, and when she turned to Jax, she couldn't entirely remove the smile from her face. "Thank you for this opportunity, General Mayor," she said. "It meant a lot to those prisoners to have this concert. Maybe you're not so bad for a changeling." Jax had a little chuckle at his expense. "I've been hearing that a lot lately, though I'm not sure how much I believe it. Perhaps there's some truth in there." "Perhaps," Octavia admitted. Then she looked Jax up and down. "I hope you're not trying to butter me up, General Mayor. I'm married to my music, you know." "Oh, don't worry. He's got plenty of sex toys already." And Clip rolled her eyes and placed herself between Jax and Octavia, marking her territory. No, my man. I'm the one who pegs him. I'm the one." You know we're not always after love. The General Mayor is merely a changeling who wants to do right by us all. Ponies and changelings each, she says whilst rubbing her wetness up against his folds, trying to mark him so that this filthy pony wench will not get closer to her man. It was a joke, Octavia said, backing off slightly, understanding. Then she bowed her head. I hope today has opened your eyes some, General Mayor. Think about what I asked you before, about the parade, if you're really trying to do the right thing. The second part of that sentence didn't need saying. You didn't know the dynamic between Dingo High and Snoot. Snoot gave me some random add-ons on the 4chan's way into the game, but after Kickstarter and a delay and getting Sony to publish their game, we're doing and Kickstarter down getting Daddy Sony on board, some randos on the 4chan's got tired of waiting and started making a game. Somehow they end up finishing way before the Monster High even had a chance of launching, while having a way more relevant story, unlike Monghing's Mortin Hardship. Oh, really now? Some ponies can play a cello and sing on a sloped roof. Well, of course, they're not FBI agents. What's wrong with you? Castlemania. General Mayor Yax and Oberstleutnant Alclip stood behind a blast shield, erected a few hundred meters away from the Castle of Friendship. The two officers had spent the entire week hastily organizing a demolitions team and requisitioning 25 tons of explosives to fill the Castle of Friendship with enough dynamite to level it flat. And now the fruits of their labors were about to pay off. Hopefully, with the castle destroyed, the two would be able to return to Canterlot and continue the important work that needed to be done. Instead of wasting time dealing with the Queen's vanity project, Queen Chrysalis herself stood behind the blast shield, eagerly shifting her weight from hoof to hoof, while her team of bodyguards prevented anybody, pony or changeling, from getting too close without her permission. Yax turned his attention further behind her, where several reporters had gathered along with the pony onlookers whose curiosity had the better of them, and dragged them out of their houses to witness this historic event. Camera crews had positioned themselves on platforms further back to get a clear shot at the crystal castle as it crumbled into shards and glitter, at the very least. Yax knew it to be an impressive propaganda piece both for her and back home. Then came the time to blow the charges. The demolition team hooked up the fuses to the blasting machine, and Queen Chrysalis herself pulled it closer with her magic. To the end of the magic of friendship, she proclaimed, a wicked grin on her face as she pushed the plunger down. And then nothing happened. An earth-shattering boom blasted out of the castle, spewing dust and smoke into the air, and the changelings gathered around, whistled and cheered, while the ponies scowled or looked away. Jackson and Clip turned to each other and shook their hooves, smiling that the job was now done, until a bout of laughter broke out from the ponies behind them. Jax turned his attention back towards the clearing smoke, only to see that the castle still stood. A little bit blackened from the blast, but none the worse for wear. Made in Equestria, some pony joked, earning another round of guffaws. Queen Chrysalis's eyes twitched as she regarded the castle still standing like a defiant enemy mocking her. Snarling, she whipped her head around to stare directly at Yaxniclip, who cowered back out of reflex. More explosives, she growled. Yep, this is gonna take a while. This is really going to take quite a while, I'm afraid. And I am sure every time it takes a while, it will be accompanied by an equally massive lore dump. Start building, naval yards, by the way. We're going to need a lot of them if I'm to build a fleet at some point in the not too distant future, hopefully. Oh, that's Manhattan, or whatever, no. No, sort of Manhattan, yes. Manhattan Protectorate, that was it. Any news over here? No, I figured. Speaking of, I've still got Special Forces doctrines to get to. Jungle Specialist Shore Parties. Well, Shore Party, obviously. Combat Insertion. Paratroop Special Force Cap Contribution plus 10%. Special Force Cap what? Oh, that one then. Combat insertion, yes. Airborne armor, of course. Medical details, signals. Battalion modifier, power, defense. Supply use, organization. Breakthrough and soft attack. Special force attack. Supply grace. Recovery rate. Breakthrough, definitely, because breakthrough will reduce the damage they take on the actual drop, so that one, for obvious reasons. An earth-shattering kaboom ends in a second failure. There you go, that's all you need to know. It's a second failure. It's going to be followed by a third failure. Until eventually we just give up. That's all. There we go. Okay, there we go. Yes, I was waiting for them to just bust out the nuclear weapon before I bothered ruining it. If I even can, this one is actually... There we go. Oh boy. Ultimate ratio, a Reginarium. The trains have been rolling into Ponyville one after the other for days now, delivering a non-stop swarm of materiel and soldiers to the small town. Oberstleutnant Alclip, frazzled as she was by trying to defeat a building made out of crystals, had barely managed to straighten her uniform and make herself look presentable before the third attempt to take down the Castle of Friendship. She'd arrived a few minutes late, which was completely unlike her, but she'd been so run down by trying to direct the resource of the hair to complete one stubborn task that her 2-hour nap had turned into 4 by the time she woke up that morning. At least neither Queen Chrysalis nor General Major Yak seemed to notice or care that she arrived a little late. The Queen and the top brass of the hair stood assembled in a field, glaring at the castle through binoculars. In front of them were the fruits of Alclip's works. Over 1,000 pieces of artillery and 100,000 high-explosive shells assembled and ready to begin firing. Alclip couldn't help but grimace as she looked at what her proud hair had been reduced to. It was desperate and ridiculous, sure, but leveling a castle made out of crystals shouldn't have been this hard. Alclip approached Yax and the Queen, managing to force herself to perform an exhausted salute when Yax spotted her. He gestured with a gossamer wing for her to approach, and when she did, he bit his lower lip with his fangs and shook his head. I hope this doesn't mean pegging time is over for this week. It will work, Queen Chrysalis screamed, and Alclip noticed that she and Yax weren't the only ones suffering from her failures. She grabbed one of the artillery officers standing nearby and pressed her muzzle against his as she bared her teeth in a remarkable display of fraying sanity. Tell them to fire at will. Bring this accursed castle down. The artillery officer, startled and frightened, could only nod until the Queen released him, and then the command was passed down to the guns. The officers all put on their hearing protection and took a few steps back as the artillery pieces began firing shell after shell into the castle. Alclip anxiously lifted her wings, desperate that so much firepower could achieve some effect, and she swore she could see crystal shards flying off the castle amidst the smoke and debris from the impact. But as salvo after salvo bombarded the castle and shook the earth like a terrible thunder, Alclip's hopes soon crumbled when she saw the castle still standing tall, and when the last shot was finally fired over 3 hours later, no discernible damage could be seen from so far away. Jax and Alclip shared the look, each knowing this meant even more work for the two of them. Oh, goody good. 70-day event. Why? Why, dear God, why? I know the joke! I know the joke, video game! I know the joke! You knock it. No, no, video game. I fucking refuse. You are not going to Borderlands me. No, I refuse. No, I refuse, video game. I refuse to acknowledge your joke. Your joke is, it's really, really tough. No. I've already watched Borderlands. I don't need to see it in equestrian form. Like, you see, I shot that guy. Oh, you shot that guy? Yeah, I shot that guy. Wow, you shot that guy. Yeah, I shot that guy. Wow, you really did shoot that guy. I do not need this in my life. Is this something else? If I see the word Crystal Castle, I'm... General Mayor Hux wasted no time barging into the Queen's office before the Queen's guard could stop him, ignoring the shouts of warning and the weapons trained in his direction. Your Majesty, he shouted, stomping up to her desk and barely managing a salute through his exhausted anger. We need to talk. Back away, General Mayor, the Queen's Guard Captain Lakin Cardo snarled. Who gave you permission to? Enough, Lakin. Chrysalis barked, sending Captain Lakin wincing and bowing his head like a dog brought to heel. And the Queen shifted her attention from the paperwork on her desk to the General Mayor in front of her. Respect your Queen, General Mayor, or this will be a very short conversation, she warned him. It took all of Yak's willpower to bite back an angry retort. Instead, he forced himself to close his eyes, take a break, count to 3, and then begin to speak. Your Majesty, sending bomber against... Nope. I do, Your Majesty, but obviously you do not, Chrysalis cut him off. So long as it's... Nope. I get so much as a hint of what you're talking about. I am noping the fuck out, you little shits. Do I want super heavy tanks? I do want super heavy tanks. Thank you. One final... Nope. Was that the last one? I bet that was not the last one. I guarantee that was not the last one. I promise you that was not the last one. It can't be the last one. No, no. Not in this video game. No, not a chance. There we go. Castle, sweet castle. General Mayor Yak signed off on the last directive of the refurbishment of the Castle of Friendship into a new administrative centre for the Equestrian Heartland. So, the final joke was, we didn't destroy it, we just made it into a filing cabinet. With Queen Chrysalis's failure to destroy the castle, the leader of the Changelings' hives had finally reluctantly admitted defeat. Since destroying the castle was no longer an option, it would instead be covered in concrete to hide the original structure from sight, and change the architecture to something resembling the buildings back in the homelands. Out of sight, out of mind, as the saying goes. And within a few last directives, any pony or any ling that mentioned the existence of the Castle of Friendship would certainly find themselves out of sight before long once the censors and secret police got wind of them. Yaks didn't care, though that was a reasonable compromise to leveling Ponyville with thousands of strategic bombers. Putting the papers aside, his desk for later, Jax slid out of his chair and went down the hall to where Oberstleutnant Eclipse had set up her office. During the weeks they'd been stuck in Ponyville for the Queen's folly. Eclipse had left the door open, though Yak still knocked on it out of politeness. When he stuck his head inside, the Ling jumped at the sound, startled out of her important work, and scrambled to stand up and salute when she realized who had called on her. General Mayor. Relax, Eclipse, Yak said, stepping into the office and shutting the door behind him. He sat down in one of the seats across from Eclipse and gestured for her to do the same. And the Oberstleutnant sat back down in her chair. So finally, this whole mess is behind us, he said, leaning back in the chair and rubbing his eyes. Yes, finally, Eclipse agreed. I was beginning to think it would never end. You're not the only one. Oh, God, you can say that twice. I know the feeling. Eclipse fighting with some paper on her desk, then lightly cleared her throat. So, General Mayor, what do you need? Need? Oh, nothing. Yak said, waving a hoof. I just want to know if you'd be interested in some drinks and dinner tonight. When you're finished with your work, I think we could both use some time to unwind and breathe. Drinks and dinner, Eclipse echoed. She took a moment to think over before an easy smile appeared on her muzzle. I'd like that a lot, General Mayor. Good. And one last thing. Bring the strap on. Yax winked at her as he stood up, a light fluttering feeling settling in his gut. Let's see if we can get through a night without any titles, Eclipse? Eclipse ashamedly smiled back and tried to hide her face by turning back to her work. I'll try my best, Yax. There we go. Right. Get rid of the witch. This is going to be a 3-eventer at least, I bet you. A 3-eventer at least. Maybe more. Supplementary love synthesization. Yep, keep the love going. so I don't know what this does. I'm going to click this and see what it does. I think it might do something negative, which is why I've been ignoring it up until now. But I'm going to hope and pray that it might be something good instead. Yes. Hope and pray. Hope and prayer. These are the primary weapons of my continued existence. Advanced amphibious tractors and amphibious APCs. I really kind of... Well, never mind. I haven't actually started producing them anyway, so it's fine. We'll just do one factory each. That should be more than enough, frankly. Oh my god, nothing has popped in a while. Could it be a single eventer? Could it be? My god, that would be nice. Maybe I'll have a moment to look at the war over here. Nothing? Nothing? Nothing at all? Nothing at all? Really? Are you diseased? Are you dying? Sick? Hurt? Wounded? What's wrong? What's wrong, video game? I don't understand. I don't get it. Is it a trick? Are you trying to fool me into some relaxing thing and then pump me full of 15 lore blurbs? There we go. The Wicked Witch of the Everfree, General Major Jax, Captain Lakincado, and the Director of Vops Vaspe Orn Cladicium all bowed low as Queen Chrysalis swept into the meeting room at Canterlot Castle. Chrysalis paid them little mind as she immediately strode over to the table and placed her hooves on the edge, grinning from ear to ear. The Everfree is no more, she proudly exclaimed, reduced to little more than charred sticks and scorched stones. Excellent work, General Major. I always know I could count on you. Jax humbly dipped his head. Thank you, Your Majesty. Now, Chrysalis began, what of the witch herself? What of this zebra that's been causing her so many problems? My best and bravest spies have carefully confirmed that the zebra shamaness, known as Zecora, is still alive and at large within the Everfree, must be said, lighting a cigarette and putting it between his lips. How? Unironically, how? We've been bombing that place like Dresden for months now. Her partisan movement has been utterly decimated, but she still has a ragtag band of survivors with her. There's hardly any forest left for her to hide in. Sooner or later, her time will come. So let's flush her out then, Lakin acclaimed. Now is our chance to deliver the coup de grace to that foul witch. With the forest no longer a threat, how much longer can she hide? Chrysalis thought for a moment, then grinned even wider. I should hunt the zebra personally. Ha ha! Yes, that's a brilliant idea. She proclaimed, it would only be fitting for the grace of the Changeling Queen to bring back the head of the zebra that has caused us so much trouble. At once, all three underlings shared a look of concern. Pardon my impudence, Your Majesty, but the Everfree is no place for a queen to be. I'm sure the task force will be capable of leading itself if anything were to happen to you. Yes, I have learned to never ever give Chrysalis her will. I have been taught this lesson ad infinitum, repeatedly, with great and forceful repetition. I understand. No give Chrysalis anything at all. Never ever again. Ever, ever, never ever ever again. Witch Hunt woes. Oh, well, we're on 2 pop-ups now. It looks my prediction of 3 will come true. Deep in the recession of the forest, the hunters were afraid. Setting up camp where the undergrowth was naught but soot and ashes, they huddled around unlit campfires, for there was no foliage to serve as fuel. I didn't bring wood. And told each other stories of the monsters that still lurked within the dark. Why did I set up a campfire if I don't have wood? Fearful of the forest as they were, the soldiers of the Farnspar took pride in the extraordinary nature of their service, for only the best of the best could delve deep into the Everfree and return. They had survived bugbears and parasprites and the depredation of the forest's partisans, but even with the Everfree scorched and atrophied, its most infamous denizens remained uncowed and at large. Zecora, the witch, who entered a battle with her face hidden behind a shamanistic mask, or who could change bodies like any changeling shapeshifter, or whose visage no soldier of the hair had ever laid eyes upon and lived to tell the tale. The partisans who painted themselves in their rudimentary esoteric camouflage paid homage to their leader in the evocation of Sabrican tribal markings. It was her who the changelings hunted and feared. They recounted to each other hearsay of what had befallen their fellow hunters, recalling the snippets of information that eluded the attention of the censors and propagandists. They drank toasts to fallen brothers-in-arms Major Pugnax, a Pippinus leader of his doomed Kampfgruppe, whose ossified form was found sticking out of the cupola of his tank, having been petrified by the same witchcraft that turned his soldiers to stone. Or the 36 Fallschirmjägers who had been dropped over the heart of the forest, disappearing beneath the tree canopy at the nadir of the descent to be swallowed up a piece by the forest. A patrol found their bodies days later, when the entire platoon hanging from a grove of trees by their parachute straps, which had been fashioned into makeshift nooses. The changeling commanders in Canterlot read the report that trickled in from the hunters who'd survived their foray into the forest, returning battered and empty-hooved, and more often than not marred by traumas both within and without. When it became clear that the hare would not be able to track down the witch, the reports were filed away to be quietly forgotten about, the hunters reassigned to other less dangerous postings, and the zebra expunged from all official records. After all, what didn't exist couldn't be a threat. One bad apple. The billboard over the farm was the first thing Yax noticed as his car came to a stop. Stepping out of the shiny black staff car, Yax squinted at the billboard, Sweet Apple Acres. The sign read, placed above a grinning orange earth pony wrapping her forelegs around the shoulders of two famous changeling film actors. All three grinning from ear to ear, home to the sweetest fruit in all the hives, each apple picked with love. I read the message below it. Yax frowned. Had one of the infamous elements of harmony really gone turncoat? He had to find out. He thought back to the Great War as he made his way up towards the farmhouse at the top of the hill, his contingent of bodyguards staying close by his side. He had come across the element bearers once in the field during the Great War. Those damn ponies had rallied their soldiers on their command and repelled wave after wave of Yax's veteran Jaegers, refusing to yield the critical bridgehead until the Equestrian army's retreat had been secured. They only finally retreated once Yax managed to make the bridgehead a high-priority target for Luftwaffe, before bringing forward 2 companies of tanks to break through under a creeping artillery barrage. Out of all the engagements Yax took part in during the Great War, that one had nearly broken him as a commander. The irony wasn't lost on him that now the end of the war had seemingly broken one of those mares and placed her squarely under his hoof as the administrator of Central Equestria. Pony labourers paused their work in the fields to watch Yax as he approached, at least until their changeling overseers barked at them to get back to it. When Yax looked up at the porch of the farmhouse, he saw the orange mare herself sitting in a rocking chair, watching the indentured servants labour hard in her fields. He wasn't sure how to feel about this sight. Hadn't this mare been the incarnation of honesty? Hadn't she been one of the most loyal ponies in all of Equestria? What was she doing suddenly supporting the changelings? Something about it twisted his guts the wrong way, but he couldn't put a name to it. The mare noticed Yax approaching, and he stood up and donned her hat. She donned her hat before trotting out to meet him. "Howdy, all, and welcome to Sweet Apple Acres," she proclaimed, her voice dripping with hospitality. "Name's Applejack. Pleasure to meet you. Is it General?" Applejack asked, sheepishly, cocking her head to the side. "Forgive me, I ain't the best with the ranks of the hare yet. I weren't the smartest of ponies. Not that many of us are all that intelligent." "It's General Major, but please call me Yax." Oh god, this is going to be a long one too. Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Yes, it motherfucking is. A broken element. Alright, excuse me for forgetting. General Major Applejack put on the most sincere and apologetic smile she could muster. "You thirsty, General Major? I got fresh pressed cider back in the house if you want some." Applejack emphatically nodded to her house, and Jax waved a hoof for 2 of his bodyguards to enter first and inspect the premises. "In a minute, Miss Applejack," he said. "Here's an eyebrow at her. It's Miss, right? You aren't married?" "Married to my work, maybe." Raises an eyebrow. Applejack said with a laugh, "You don't get to be the biggest producer of fresh fruit in the hegemony by sitting around on your flank all day enjoying your excess. It was a bright and sunny day when the changelings moved in and took things over. Production's never been higher." That part was true. Yax at least knew. He'd signed a few ordinances instructing changeling investors to devote funding to collaborationist industries in central Equestria, and Sweet Apple Acres had surprisingly been one of them. The simple orchards of the farm before the war had been expanded into massive plantations with on-site processing and shipping factories and warehouses. Applejack certainly profited massively from it, but would one of the former elements, bearers, really turn that easily for money? This, I think, is the 4th time you've reiterated this point, and I really want to fucking kill you with your own genitalia. "I know our regulations can be rather stringent," Yax cautiously ventured, trying to bait out something from the pony renowned through the nation for her honesty. "Have they caused you too much trouble?" "Nope, ain't had no problems in the slightest," Applejack proudly proclaimed. "Sometimes you gotta be willing to bend for the customer. The hegemony is just my newest and largest customer." "And your workers?" Jax asked, gesturing out towards the fields where the indentured servants labored. "Any problems with them?" "Only problem with them I have is they don't work hard enough." Applejack nodded along. "Production could be even better if I squeezed a little more out of them. Thankfully, I got some loyal changelings to help enforce order around here. Now, about that cider, perhaps a room for the night. It's the least I could do for you, General Mayor." Yax regarded the grinning mayor standing in front of him and fought hard not to scowl. He didn't know what to expect, perhaps some sensation of defiance, but no, all he saw was a broken mare who'd bend over backwards if he asked her to. Whatever Applejack had been before the war. 6th time. It would be rude to turn down such hospitality, wouldn't it? Absolutely, just downright dreadful, frankly. I need some Rammstein in my life to make this less terrible. There. And Applejack is not best pony, chat. Not best pony. Not best pony. Starlight Glimmer is best pony. Closely followed by Rarity. Applejack is bottom of the barrel. And if you don't acknowledge this, you're as bad as the writers. What can I say? It's pretty terrible. Can honesty lie? Yax couldn't fall asleep that night. Something about the day's events bothered him. Applejack had been nothing but kind and courteous, perhaps a bit overly so, and had shown him nothing to leave him disappointed. The simple fact of the matter is that his larger-than-life figure, one of the 6 mayors who had saved Equestria time and time again, had reduced herself to the perfect collaborationist, the perfect pony subject for the hegemony. It was what any changeling would have wanted, a perfect figurehead of collaboration to show the rest of the rebellious populace, so why didn't it sit well with him? Perhaps it was all an act. Yax thought to himself. Applejack had been surrounded by changeling soldiers and enforcers the whole day. Maybe she was just acting. But he frowned at the ceiling of the master bedroom he'd been placed in for the night. Could the elements of honesty lie so convincingly? Could she betray her element like that? Maybe she was just a figurehead here, a puppet, and the changelings around the farm were the ones really in control. Yax felt that he had to know, if only to answer the question nagging him and eating away at him from the inside. Yax slipped out of his bed and opened his door. The bodyguard he'd posted outside of it jumped, obviously startled back to reality after dozing. At least no pony had come to try and kill him while he rested. "Stay here," Yax ordered him. "I'll be right back." Yax saw Applejack sit bolt upright in the small bed in the guest room as soon as the door creaked open. Her eyes were wide and her breath ragged before she blinked and looked around. As soon as she saw Jax, she swallowed hard, put on a smile, and kicked off her blankets. "General Mayor," she said in greeting, "what's bothering you? Anything I can get you?" Rather than answering, Yax stepped inside and slowly shut the door behind him, waiting until he heard the quiet click on the latch. Then, pulling a chair over from the corner of the room, he sat down backwards on it and rested his forehooves on the back. "Applejack," he slowly began, trying to carefully pick his words. "Why did you do it?" he finally asked her. "Why did you sacrifice everything you had to become—" he gestured around them as if that explained it all— "to become this?" Applejack opened her mouth to spit out the same line she'd been feeding him all day, but something in Yak's eyes stopped her. Finally, after several long seconds to deliberate, she frowned at the officer instead of smiled. "I gotta protect these ponies," she said in a low voice. "I gotta do everything I can to protect them. I fought against your kind for as long as I could to protect them, and that failed. Now I kiss your boots to protect them. Throwing away my integrity, my element, my dignity. Ain't none of that was gonna help these ponies, but being your little toady, well, that was." "But why?" Yax asked her. "I've heard rumors that your friends are fighting in the resistance against us. Why not join them? Why sacrifice all the intangibles you once held for a bunch of ponies you barely even know?" "Because there's more than one way to make a difference," Applejack said, her voice dripping to an almost inaudible level as her eyes fell to the floor. "It ain't all gotta be guns and glory. I'm doing whatever I got to do to protect ponies, 'cause that's the equestrian way." She looked at him. "I know changelings don't share the same morals as us ponies. You may have won the war, but we ain't lost, General Mayor, because we're willing to do whatever it takes to protect each other. You consume and destroy, we provide and protect." That's a good story. I like that. That's a nice little twist. Vulture 1066. What the fuck is this, my Eastern brother? Just woke up. This is about 2 hours and 7 minutes of My Little Pony lore reading. And we continue. I wish Deutschland über allen. If the good guys had won the Second World War, I wouldn't be here right now. This would not be allowed under them. A flicker of hope. "Why do you want to know so bad, Yax?" Applejack asked him. "You want to find out if I was being sincere or not? You want to rip me away from these ponies for being a pony sympathizer? I can't help who I am. I can't help I'm an equestrian, through and through, any more than I can help being a soldier for the bugs. And shoot, if I can't help but help ponies, then that's meant for the two of us. For the two of us. God, stop it. Don't speak like that. I hate you." Yax was silent for a long while. Why did he want to know so badly? Why did Applejack's apparent subservience to the hegemony bother him so much? But slowly, like the stars appearing in the dim light of a dying dusk, the thoughts began to connect themselves together. I think I wanted to believe in something," Jack said, his eyes meeting Applejack's. "I think I wanted to know that some things are too sacred to collapse. Deep down inside, you're still a believer in harmony and in Equestria. If you had managed to break you and honestly turn you, then I don't think I could have trusted any laws of nature in this world. Why? Because I'm written by a soft-hearted goddamn pony sympathizer, and thus every single action that is in any way to the benefit of my faction is the wrong choice in this one very long moral lecture." His gaze turned towards the open window where the stars and the moon lit up the lands outside. "It's comforting to know that we are objectively evil, that all of us are simply monsters that enjoy to be pegged, and that we should have lost this great war because, again, pony sympathizers." "And what about you, General Mayor?" Applejack asked, eyebrow raised. "Are you trying to do good in this world your kind created?" I don't know, Yax admitted. "I will never betray my country. I will do everything I can to maintain the Pax Chrysalis, but perhaps it doesn't have to be a world of tyranny and oppression. Maybe it can be one of cooperation for the good of both of our species." He stood up and pushed the chair back into the corner of the room. "Thank you, Applejack," he said, bowing his head towards the Earth Pony. "Carry on with your work. I will not bother you again." And then he left. Dev wrote this. Dev wrote this, chat. That should be the next narrative, that Dev wrote Equestria War. And, goddamn, the commissariat is, Wait, local police force? What? Ah, right, okay, yes. Yeah, no, the commissariat is not a good idea, is it? No, we gotta have secret police at least. I tried to do commissariat there, but it just don't work. It just don't work. It just causes you way more casualties. That's all it really does. Alright, well, hopefully... Like, I love how I still haven't gotten these last points because they are buried this far down in the goddamn event tree. And surely there's gotta be some points here. Calm the fucking hell on. I would hope. Well, still no points. The Changeling of the Guard. Move, move, keep those legs moving, fillies. You call that a march? You're so damned behind that it's a May at best. And Parchment are going to surrender if you ask for the permission to arrest them. Commandant Second Wind frowned as he watched the new recruits of the newly minted Canterlot Guard try and fail to march up and down the parade grounds behind the Canterlot Castle. Everything about them was a mockery of the Royal Canterlot Guard, the elite regiment he had belonged to before the Changelings won the war and dismantled the force. The armor of his new recruits was plated in gold to resemble the resplendent protection of the old Royal Guard, but a thick black stripe had been painted down the midsection, like it was dividing each pony in two. And instead of the sisters' coats of arms, the Changeling trident now adorned the collar and flanks. No doubt if the sisters were here to see this, they'd be ashamed of how the Royal Guards had been satirized by the bugs. Maybe that was the point. But Second Wind didn't care. The Royal Guard hadn't been a dead-end job for him before the war. He lacked the pedigree to move up its ranks. Not being from a noble family, and his promotion just before the war ended had only been out of desperation born from a deteriorating military situation. He had little love lost for the aristocratic unicorns that had filled the Royal Guard's upper echelons, and perhaps that was why he was the highest-ranking officer to defect from the defunct Royal Guard to the new Canterlot Guard. There certainly wasn't much to complain about now. All he had to do was listen to what the bugs told him to do, and they gave him almost free rein to shape the Canterlot Guard as he wanted. Perhaps the Changelings winning the war wasn't such a bad thing after all. I just want the fucking points to get rid of all the countless negative modifiers. That is all I want. That is all I desire, and that is all what the video game refuses to grant me. Oh. The Changelings. The purest form of painful cancer eating away at my insides. Nominative determinism. Second Wind made sure... it's a multiple choice, so I have to read it to find which option is against the Queen's Guard. Made sure to stand up and salute as General Major Yax approached the table at the far end of the bar. General Major, it's good to see you, the Pegasus said, bowing his head in deference to his changeling superior. He did, after all, owe his new position to the directives of Yax. Commandant, Yax said, removing his hat and lightly tossing it on the table before sitting down. Please take a seat. You've probably been on your hooves all day. Getting the new recruits to march in formation is a challenge. I didn't expect to take this long, Second Wind admitted, sitting down across from the General Major. Most of the ponies who were trained in the war wouldn't dare sign up for something like the Canterlot Guard, and most of my comrades in the Royal Guard would probably skin me alive if they found out this is how I've approached the post-war life. Well, you've certainly come farther and done better than most have. Now that the war's over, Yax said. He snickered as a thought crossed his mind, and he shook his head. I've read your file. Obviously, it's amusing to me that a pony named Second Wind can go from flying wounded comrades out of a war zone in his bare back and still getting no recognition from his old institution to finding himself in command of a brave new institution under a new regime. I suppose it's fitting, Second Wind said with a shrug. I've always found it funny how our names work, though I'm not as strong a believer in prophetic naming than most. Too bad I don't have any ponies named Long March or Parade Formation under my command. The two chuckled in their moment of camaraderie, at least until Second Wind slowly began to frown. But the more I'm out here, what I'm supposed to do, General Major. I have not had a lot of love lost for the Royal Guard at the end of the day, but Equestria is still my home. I hate seeing it suffer like this, and sometimes when I'm out there drilling the new troops, I feel like I'm part of the problem. A pained, conflicted look took hold of him, his face, and he looked to Yax for an answer. What am I supposed to do? Let's see. Well, that's the obvious answer, and the obviously correct answer, which means that that is the right answer. Again, always think of these decisions as if you were a tiny, naive girl child. It is the only way to avoid the traps. Uprooted, General Moyak sifted through the latest reports coming in from across the Equestrian heartland, looking for anything that needed his immediate attention. Most were just progress reports on various projects and updates from a garrison commander in their efforts to quell unrest throughout the Hive's new holdings. Nothing serious that required action from him. He did, however, notice a letter addressed from the garrison commander in Ponyville that was marked urgent across the front and back. Sighing, Yak opened it, already expecting something inane to come from that backwater tower that had caused him so much trouble in the past, only for his eyes to twitch at what he'd read. Apparently, the concrete facade that had been erected on the Nope. Nope. The Gilded Chains. Commandant Second Wind felt his skin crawl as he wandered from table to table at the soiree, looking for something to pass the time until he would be granted permission to return home. It wasn't his dress uniform that bothered him, though the new Canterlot Guard dress blues were some of the most uncomfortable uniforms he'd ever worn. Rather, it was the purpose of the soiree that bothered him, a party to celebrate the impending destruction of Celestia's School for Gifted Unicorns, attended by Everling, who was anything, alongside pony collaborators looking to make a good impression on their masters. If Second Wind had a choice, he wouldn't have been here, but as Commandant of the Canterlot Guard, it was his duty to be present. The party was barely tolerable until a changeling general came over to greet him. Commandant, the general said, a disgusting grin on her fanged muzzle. A pleasure to see you here. It's always great to see sensible ponies making the most of their new lot in life. Second Wind at least had enough professionalism to greet the general promptly. General Actia, he said, quickly pulling the changeling's name from his memory. It's a pleasure to see you as well, ma'am. I hope you have been well. Better than ever, General Akita said with a laugh. Though I certainly long for the excitement of the war. Peace is a droll affair. Sadly, do you think we ever crossed paths on the battlefield? She chuckled and waved over a pony without waiting for Second Wind's response. Do you happen to know Windbreak? She was a soldier in the war too. I think she was part of your royal guard. Second Wind blinked in surprise as he locked eyes with Windbreak. The mare had fought alongside him in the war, but had been captured during the evacuation from Bales. He'd thought she was dead. We crossed paths, Second Wind said, nodding to the other Pegasus, who bowed her head. I'm glad to see she's doing well. Doing better than ever now that I took her under my wing as my personal servant. General Akita dropped a gossamer wing over Windbreaker's back, and Second Wind saw the mare suppress a shudder. Then the general tipped her hat to him. Anyhow, I must be off. Keep on doing the good work. You're an inspiration of ponies like Windbreak everywhere. The General turned and left, taking Windbreak with her, to violently and lesbianly breed her in a back closet somewhere. Vulture 1066, if our jokes aside, do you want to play Battletech? There's just about as much reading in that goddamn game. No! I don't care about this side character video game. You have managed to drum the last bit of interest out of me. Nickel Neko, Changelinder's list a plot. Come on, this is... Okay, so the Zebra one is one event, but this is like 3 or 4. Could you calm the fuck down, video game? No, I don't care about Second Wind. I don't care about Second Wind. At least I can still muster an element of give a shit about Yax and his favorite breeding pillow, but I cannot for Second Wind. Ration for population growth, yep. Impose the increased breeding camps on everybody as quickly as possible. No, I don't care about Second Wind. I do not care about you, Second Wind. You have given me a good reason to not read anymore, and I will grab a hold of it with both fucking hands. Or hooves, if you so desire. Come on. Come on. Surely the crowning will finally give me one of these god-awful points. This day is going to be perfect. Oberstleutnant Eclipse stood in the magnificent throne room of the Canterlot Palace as the Pegasus and Unicorns labourers worked hard to place the decorations for Queen Chrysalis's coming coronation. The past few days had been a whirlwind of activity, and the next few were likely to be the same as the final preparations were made for the Queen's arrival. She held a checklist by her side in her magic and scratched off another box with her pen as the ponies finalised the decorations. That was the easy part done, at least. Hopefully everything else would fall into place soon. She looked through the list as she turned away and began to walk back to her office. She made sure to send out all the invitations to the remainder Collaboration had been instrumental in keeping the peace in the city. Security had been organized with every single building along the parade route checked by the hair in case any were harboring resistance agents or ponies sympathetic to the partisans' cause. A cadre of bodyguards had been assigned to protect the Queen during the parade, chosen from the most capable of the collaborators and defectors to emphasize how much the Queen was beloved by Equestria. And to top things off, Second Wind and his Canterlot guard would be the honor guard for the occasion. She tucked the checklist back into her pockets and hummed to herself as she went along. Everything was going smoothly. It was time for the changelings to finally claim vengeance for the Canterlot defeat in 1002. That day had hardly been perfect, but this one would be. She was sure of it. Points. Give points. Give them. Give them now. A surprising lack of pop-ups. Ah, there we go. Ah, yet another trap, eh? One last humiliation. After the Queen's procession through the city, she will take to the podium here at the Royal Palace, where she will watch the rest of the parade. General Major Yak said, tracing the parade path with his hoof. The other generals of the Hare's High Command, along with ranking officials from the Queen's Guard, watched with rapt attention. First, we will start with regiments of the Queen's Guard, who will end their march by filing out of the palace. Fluff, 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 fluff. What is the trap? All I need to know is the Queen's Guard's position. Cue fanfare from Octavia Melody, sharing a thunderous flyover, and that's a wrap. Any questions? The changeling generals shook their heads and murmured their agreements, save one. What about the POWs, General Major? Lakin Cardo asked. You know Her Majesty would love to see those filthy wretches squirming in their chains before her. It would be the icing on the cake. Jax frowned. The POWs would go before the tanks, he said. The imagery of the defeated being driven before our metal monsters that broke Equestria would be sufficient to please the Queen, I hope. Certainly, Lakin agreed with a smug smile, and I'll give the rest of us something to feel proud of as well. I can't wait to see it done. The changelings broke soon after that, the officers going their separate ways, to prepare for the upcoming coronation, leaving Yaks behind with the parade plans. He frowned as he notes the thought about the POW march Octavia had begged him to call off, but could he still do that? Could he still make that change last minute? But perhaps the better question was, should he? The Baxter's list had been nothing short of humiliation. Oh, of course, yes. Yes, yeah. Parade must be called off, yes. Always call off any... Again, if the Queen's Guard is for it, you must be against it. That is the entire thing, in a bit of a nutshell. We got the new boat, by the way? We do. Okay, I should have started on that as well. I haven't engaged a whole lot with the actual, video game portion of this for a while, but I am looking to eventually build new boats, so let's get started on building new boats and on spending some naval experience. Speaking of, has anything happened over here? Nope, it's exactly the same front lines as last time I looked 2 hours ago. God help me. Early transport helicopters. Well, ain't that just cute? I do like transport helicopters. Can I get military police yet? I cannot. Right. Back to the boats. Right. Transport helicopters. Yes. That one. 2 lines will probably be enough. Automatic magic rifles. Better automatic magic rifles. Better anti-tank guns. Alright, I do have better guns. Alright, I should get better guns too. That's a good point. I should get better guns. I really should. I should get better guns. And I am down metal. Okay. Well, you produce an assload of metal for me, and so you shall continue to do so in trade for a few civilian factories. Subjects may soon raise their autonomy, do they? Manhattan Protectorate. Oh, yes, because they wanted to try and get independence. Which I kind of want them to do. Queen of the Big Apple? You know what? Yes. Yes. I like little Lilac. She's a little cutie. We're going to let her do what she wants. I like the idea of that. Lilac's a good grill. Okay, finally, the end of that long line. Alright, we've got that, and I think... Let's get started. Confession. The parade was about to start, but Yak still had enough time for a quick lunch, knowing that marching on an empty stomach and then reviewing the troops for hours wasn't exactly the smartest idea. General Mayor took a much-needed lunch break as his calm before the storm moment to prepare himself for the march to come. But even that wasn't spared the demands of responsibility as a pair of soldiers hurriedly rushed into his office after a perfunctorily sounding knock on the door. The Queen herself better be in danger or something, Yax grumbled, setting his sandwich aside. What is it? A pony turned herself in, claiming she had something urgent she needed to talk to you about. One of the guards said she claims that she is, or was, a member of the Resistance. It's Octavia Melody, sir. Yep, knew it. She's gonna warn me about an attack now. The name struck Yax like a slap to the face. Octavia? He asked, incredulous. Then he stood up, his lunch forgotten. Take me to her, now. Minutes later, he entered the interrogation room, but Octavia was seated at the bare table. She looked disheveled and much the worse for wear. He didn't even wait for the door to shut behind him before he started asking questions. Right now, I don't care if you're part of the Resistance or not. What did you need to tell me? Octavia looked at Yax and nodded. A splinter cell of the Resistance in Canterlot wants to assassinate Queen Chrysalis, the mayor said. Despite the wishes of the Resistance, the radicals are moving forwards with a plot to bomb her during her parade. Your own Canterlot guard captain is going to deliver the bomb himself. Yax blinked in shock. Second wind? How do you know this? And why tell me? That's none of your business. Because I took away the POW parade, duh. That's none of your business, Octavia said, shaking her head. What is important is that the status quo in Canterlot is tolerable for ponies, thanks in large part to your efforts. But blowing up the Changeling Queen will do nothing but make things work. Worse, forget reprisals. If the Queen's guard gets to avenge the Queen, nothing short of genocide will come to Canterlot. She leaned across the table. Do whatever you want with me, but you have to stop it for all our sakes. Yax stomped his hoof and cursed. I'll take care of it, he said sharply, turning about and heading to the door. And you, get back out there and get ready to play like we agreed on. The stage of apocalypse. Yax had teams of Jaegers fanning across Canterlot in minutes, searching desperately for the runaway second wind and the bomb meant for the Queen. Yax himself had taken a wind, abandoning the early stages of the procession. He would have stopped the parade entirely, but the Queen Chrysalis had already set out in her motorcade, and he didn't think she'd stop even if he told her what was about to happen. All that would accomplish would be a waste of precious time, so now his only hope was to find second wind before it was too late. Or, as luck would have it, Yax spotted a figure flitting into the top of a nearby bell tower out of the corner of his eye, and he immediately changed course. He swooped into the tower and drew his sidearm in the same motion, aligning the Pegasus in his sight. Second wind, Yax shouted, making the Pegasus jump and turn around. The two soldiers locked eyes in their standoff on opposite ends of the tower, with only a large brass bell hanging above to separate them. Don't do this, Yax urged him. Whatever you think you're trying to accomplish, you're not going to succeed. Second wind visibly shook as he offered a retort. The changeling have had their boots in the neck of ponykind for too long, he shouted back, rage and agony filling his voice. You marched in and took everything from us. And when that wasn't enough, you turned us to slaves. Windbreak, a mare I knew from the Royal Guard, and a hero in her own right. Ah, does it for the pussy, of course he does. Is some bug general's personal slave for her to play with as she pleases? Your vicious queen's selfish conquest and disdain for my entire species have brought misery to Equestria like never before. He touched his hoof to the bomb vest secured fastly around his body. I'm going to stop it, he shouted, his voice clacking with anguish. I don't care what happens to me, but she needs to die. She needs to die if Equestria is to live. Shoot him in the head. Action speaks louder. Yax cautiously closed the space between him and Second Wind, pistol held tightly in his magical grip. You will only make things worse for the ponies if you kill her, he cautioned the Pegasus. Chrysalis is more interested in personal satisfaction than the cruelty. Those interests can be diverted and distracted to prevent real harm from coming to pony kind. All it takes is the right creatures doing the right things at the right time. And that's what I'm going to do, Second Wind said. Tyrants don't topple because you appease them. Oppression doesn't end by saying please and thank you. Real change can only be brought about by decisive action. You told me yourself that just because something is the status quo doesn't mean it's right. That was a trap, huh? The one time they snuck in... I fucking knew it. I knew it there would be one time when they snuck in a trap that seemed like the right choice according to all the other ones. It isn't, Commandant, Yax shouted, only for the Pegasus to lunge at him, tackling him to the floor before Yax could fire his weapon. The pistol went flying off the bell tower, and Second Wind drove Yax's head into the bell, dazing him as brass clattered against his skull. Then, wings spread, Second Wind dived out of the tower, speeding towards the parade below. Yax scrambled to his hooves and managed to jump out of the tower after the speeding Pegasus, but he had no hopes of catching up with him. Instead, he could only shout a warning to the soldiers on the ground, and thankfully, he managed to turn a few heads before Second Wind could reach his target. Queen Chrysalis' bodyguard fell in around her, firing their weapons to the sky as the suicidal Pegasus drew closer, and Yax saw blood spray from Second Wind's body, but the Pegasus already set his course to let gravity do the work for him, and before Yax could tackle him out of the sky, the Pegasus pulled the cord hanging from his shoulder. A bright flash of light and the crack of thunder filled Yax's last waking moment, and he fell out of the sky. Well, we're gonna need some rations for stability. Recovery! Yax groaned at the beeping of a machine when trying to sit up, through his body aching enough that he gave up on the effort after a few seconds. Worried murmuring reached him, and he felt some Ling gently push him back down to the bed with her hoof. "Don't sit up, Yax," came a voice, and Yax recognized it as Eclipse. "You got hurt bad in the blast. Your exoskeleton's cracked in a lot of places. You need some time to heal." As the memory of the parade came back to Yax, the Generalmajor forced his eyes open and tried to sit up once again, now acutely aware of the splintered plates of his exoskeleton. "The Queen," he wheezed, his blurry vision settling on Eclipse's face. "Is she?" "She's okay," Eclipse said, much to Yax's relief. Her unicorn bodyguard cast a shield spell to save her from the blast. Some of the soldiers on the ground were seriously injured, though, and the Queen's favorite car needed some repair to get it running again. The parade was obviously called off after that. She'll be coronated in private tonight, with only the Queen's Guard and a few generals from the Hair in attendance. And as for Second Wind, well, I'm presuming he's paced. That thought trailed off to its obvious conclusion, and Yax closed his eyes and leaned back in his seat. "I imagine I'm going to get demoted for this," he said. "You've plenty of witnesses who saw you trying to stop Second Wind, personally at the risk of your own life. So I wouldn't worry about that. You're seen as a hero, Yax, if a tad bit late." Then she once again gently urged him to lie back down. "Lay down, Yax, and get your rest. Wops will want a statement soon enough. In case they ask, I'll just say you've been asleep this whole time." Yax reluctantly obeyed and shut his eyes, groaning as he shifted his weight on the bed. "Of course. Thank you, Eclipse." "You're welcome," Eclipse said, "and I'm just thankful you're okay." And one more pop-up. Final statement. Oh, I don't know about that. Waspir Orenclasm clicked the recording off after Yax finished giving his statement. The two changelings sat in the pregnant silence for some time before the heads of Vops broke it. "And so we come to a close," he said, his hooves steepled, his eyes focused on something off to the side of the table. "And what a remarkable tale it's been. From the defeat of 1002 to the new age of Pax Chrysalis, we truly have seen it all, haven't we?" "True enough," Yax admitted, "with plenty that I'm sure neither of wishes we'd been part of." "Quite right," Vaspir said, then sighed, then stood up. "I find no reason to believe that any part of this fiasco at the parade was orchestrated by you, Generalmajor. Perhaps some things were allowed to nearly come to be thanks to slip-up here or there, but no Ling can deny that you did your best to stop it." "Actually, I can. You should have just shot his fucker." "I'll submit this statement to Vops, get the Empress off your back, and we can both carry on with our busy lives as if this has never happened." He moved over to Yax, and the Generalmajor stood up to shake his hoof, then dismissed Yax. Left the Vops office and stood for a moment in the sunlight before Eclipse, Marcillo, and Finnicus came over to hear him. He immediately assured them all that everything was fine with a small nod. "Nothing to worry about," he told them all, "just collecting a statement." "Well, that's great to hear," Eclipse said, taking her usual place at Yax's side. "I was worried that once you went in there, you wouldn't come out again," Finnicus added. Marsilio rounded out the group by giving Yax a look over. "At least your molt should be fine, soon nobody will be able to tell you almost died in a blast that shattered your exoskeleton. You feeling alright? Any pain?" "A little ache, but I'm fine," Yax said. "Good enough to work. And make no mistake, we still have plenty of work left to accomplish. For each of us, time waits for nobody, neither changeling or pony, and it is up to us to make the best of what we've left." the post-war period of the Changelings is not so much a Hearts of Iron game as it is a minefield. A multiple-choice trap of truly remarkably epic proportions. Semi-modern sonar, yep. Boats. Boats. More boats. Make more boats. Does Arch read chat? Not when I'm busy in the 6-hour reading marathon, no. How the fuck would I be able to do that? Legitimate question. How on God's good green earth do you imagine? Just my eyes breaking apart and looking in two different directions at the same time. Over a barrel, right. At least I've read this. At least I've read the rest of this nonsense. Right. So there was not a single... Where the hell am I supposed to get the rest of these points then? Because I'm still 4 points behind. 1, 2, 3, 4... How on God's good earth? I've just about exhausted the entire tree, and I've somehow managed to dodge all of the points that are supposed to make this at least somewhat doable. Speaking of, war bonds? Improved working conditions. That's the one, I think. That'll give me a little bit more stability, probably, maybe, possibly. Oh boy. Okay, keep going down that path. Yes, yes, yes. I would like to get some kind of stuff to, you know, end the war, as there are other things, but I do not have a chance in hell of creating marine infantry to deal with all this nonsense, so, yeah. That is not happening, so I'm already sitting at 0 pony power, and it took me longer to get there than I thought, but eventually we did arrive at 0. See, I tried doing the commissariat thing, but, well, see, the commissariat thing too is yet another trap, isn't it? 50 erots worth. Okay, so I need erots worth of that, do I? Okay, shit. I should have kept that in mind. Right, supplementary love acquisition and all that to build it up a little bit more. And at least you don't have to, you know, wage a war on the ground, because if you get invaded and have to fight a land war, oh boy indeed. That would be, well, basically impossible. But yes, you need the commissariat just to get the crown in the duel, that event. That's all you need it for. After that, you need to get rid of it as quickly as you can, because it doesn't reduce resistance enough, and it gives you the organized resistance penalty, which basically doubles your casualties, so trying to apply that is an enormous goddamn trap. Which is kind of one of the dumbass things as well, because the entire story is basically centered around the idea that if you treat the ponies poorly, then they'll revolt, right? But the only way to have any chance in hell of even getting close to dealing with them is the harshest possible suppressive methods. I feel as if we've missed multiple valuable lessons here, honestly. I miss my my military thing, but you also can't use the military oppression either, because if you do that, you won't have enough compliance, because compliance actually shrinks at certain times. So it's a very, very careful balance that you need to do, and if you don't carry out the balance just right, you will just be hard-locked. It's a interesting post-war gameplay mechanic, which I kind of like, and at the same time kind of dislike, because it is very, very clear that the developers don't really want you to take this path, but at least they've created an opportunity for you to do it, you know? They fight you every single step of the way. Oh god, do they. They're laying constant traps and literally just trap options all the time to try and trip you up and try to make it impossible. But at least they allow for the option. Yeah, that's something. So once I get that, I should have enough for the other one, which I still don't have enough points. I have no idea. Okay, there. I'm still lacking 4 points, and I have... what now? 1, 2... I mean, that one is a straight negative from last time I got it. Where the hell are those points supposed to be? Diesel submarine. I mean, hey. I could do the increased thing as well, but honestly, there's no real point right now. It's just suffering through with the casualties. In fact, I am limiting casualties by doing this. As ridiculous as it sounds, I am taking less damage by simply having less dudes available to be damaged. Super heavy battleship, that does sound kind of fun. It's always best to use the law to maximize compliance with the limits of the debuff. Well, yes, but here's the thing. If you try... see, there's the thing, right? Because this is the current, and I've already kind of screwed myself, but before, when I was using the Secret Police, it reduced the garrison attacks to the point where I was at roughly a net equal. But now that I'm building compliance, now it's a net negative. And I'm still 5% points away from the -10 to local resistance. Then again, at this point, I'm gonna... well, right now, actually... well, I can only use the regional commissariat for a short amount of time until compliance will be above the 30%, because you need 30% to even maintain it, and regional commissariat in and of itself cannot maintain 30% compliance. Because you need 30% resistance, sorry. So basically, I'll be on the clock whenever I try to implement it. It would be nice to get 40%. It would be really good, but I am nowhere fucking close to that. Let's see, is it increasing? Base compliance goes 0004. Okay, so it is at least increasing. I'll do a regional commissariat a little bit, see if I can maybe boost it higher. That gives me... what? Go 0009. So it is a little bit over double, which is nice, but it's still not a whole lot, is it? It is still absolutely nothing. Yeah, no, civil, military government. Super heavy battleship on the way. Jet plane catapult. Why not? Why not make that a one-day research? Why not, indeed? Night vision. Okay, well... 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. How on God's good earth can the remaining points be in here? Yep, still 4 points away. Yep, that doesn't give anything. That's a negative event. Yep, that's one of the negative events. Are the point system another trap? Do you just not have enough points to reach the necessary level? Do all that, yep, okay, and get like that. Barony of Rumor. I don't know where you are. I don't know who you are. You can't complete them unless you change things in the last run. Okay, so it is... You are literally hard-coded to not be... Yes. See, it's like I say, though, is the post-war thing is just like one enormous trap, and that is pretty much all it is. I think that one had a point in it, but the average resistance need to be minus 30 at that point. Forward operating bases. So basically, you gotta read a guide. Otherwise, you don't stand a chance, because there are certain choices, I'm presuming, that will give you choices that will give you points. And if you don't get those points, you are going to be forever doomed, presumably. Usually not a big fan of those kind of game mechanics. As cruel as possible? I don't think so, like, because every time you were too nice. I don't know about that. I can replay it just to test, but I am 98% sure, because every time, every single solitary time I took a nice option, it would punish me, and I never saw a point from any of those. Maybe you just need to have all of the negative options, but even then, in that case, what it boils down to is you need to click the correct options. Literally. As mechanics on duty, no, Arch, you can't, you were too nice. So, but that's what I'm saying though. It's one giant puzzle that you have no hints towards at all. It is just, yes, you need to read a guide. If you don't read a guide, you're boned, because you'll have no way of guessing what the correct options are. A Tale of Two Cities. Yeah, so that's another one of the trap options. I'm wondering what happens once you finally complete the entire Pax Chrysalis tree. I wonder if that'll change anything. Because right now, there's no way of winning this. It is, if you choose the incorrect option, I think you're just doomed. I don't think there is any way at that point. Unless there's some way to, like, if you toughed it through, you can get something at the end. That's what I'm going to check out now. Because otherwise, yes, read a guide. Otherwise, you are boned. Rations for population growth? Not actually that pointful right now. Right now, it is just get love, I guess. Well, no, that's the problem too. Like, you don't, because, like, I think if you fail, you get a big fun challenge revolt and put down finally crush friendship. Nah, like, there doesn't seem to be anything either. It's just like, you didn't pick the correct options. Now you will just, die to revolt. Because at no point will they actually revolt either. So it's just, that's 1 point of stage compliance. I think, is that the last one now? The Queen's Jaeger, that was another one of the nice little trap ones. Now, can I get the average down to 30% though? It's 30%. Okay, what I do need to do, this area is, so even ending the... Alright, that does not, that cannot be that. No. That needs to be the harshest thing possible. Brutal oppression on that one. So even hunting down Sabrika does not actually end the forest thing at all. Brutal oppression in those more aggressive areas. Try and bring it down a little bit more. As military oppression was the one that was working the best, but with military oppression, you actually get locked out from this route entirely. The Jewel of the Crown route gets locked out completely unless you have, what was it? I think it was 30% compliance. So unless you have 30% compliance, you cannot do this route. And if you do the heavy oppression, you can't build up the compliance, so... basic heavy missiles. I wouldn't mind missile warfare. I was hoping there'd be points in this, but there are no points in this tree, so I guess there might be a way to do it whilst ignoring this part of the tree, which would make this part of a tree an enormous trap again, which, Jesus. And I really prefer I gotta say, I prefer the old school way they did revolts in 3, because in 3, you could actually have a revolt that would, like, start retaking territory, whereas in 4 here, the only thing that revolts do is, well, they just, like, eat away at you. It's a flat, continuous manpower tax, rather than anything else. The Night Jaegers, okay. It is too dangerous to follow through with this, my queen, yes. Okay, so now we're at the end of the tree, and now we've got an event. Right, okay, what's this event then? Oberstleutnant Alkip pushed the noodles in her bowl back and forth with her chopsticks, lost in thought. Ever since she'd spoken to Princess Twilight, she'd been wrestling with an inner turmoil that kept her awake at night. Twilight had expressed her belief that she and Yax and Marcella were doing their part to spread harmony in Equestria, even despite everything that had happened and everything the Threelings were a part of. Alkip didn't know if the Alicorn was right, or if she was just deluding herself. Was she really spreading harmony by working with Yax and faithfully executing his orders? He did seem to have the best interest of ponies under his rules in mind. And then there was the question of Thorax, the first changeling to really make a stand in the hives for the ideas of harmony. Something wrong, Clip? Yax asked. He was half finished with his ramen bowl, obviously not bothered by the same thing tormenting Clip. When Alclip opened her mouth to protest, he shook his head. I can tell when something is bothering you, Alclip. We've worked together for too long for me not to notice. Well, Clip hesitated, noting that they weren't exactly the only two bugs in the restaurant, and shrugged. I've been thinking of that conversation, she said. Yax immediately nodded in understanding. Is she right? Are you really doing the best we can do? Yax could only shrug. Perhaps, in some small little way. I wouldn't put too much stock in what she said, Alclip. She was dehydrated and probably delusional. But she wasn't wrong, Alclip insisted. Everything you've done, Yax, you've shown that you care about the ponies. You're not like Lakin or Vesper or even the Queen. You're just like... They just like tormenting ponies for fun, but not you. I suppose you're right, Yax said. I just don't see the ponies working with the ponies to make everybody stronger. Changeling and pony alike, it's pragmatic. And harmonic, Alclip said, nodding to herself. Twilight was right. We are trying to make this dark world a little brighter. One little thing at which you and we do believe in harmony, and that's a good thing, she concluded. Then she smiled. And so long as we keep doing it, maybe we can build a better tomorrow for everybody. A more harmonic tomorrow. It's not like we're exploring uncharted ground, you know? Okay. And... Okay, hello. What the fuck is this massive list of stuff? Oh, okay, experiment resources. Okay, I get it, I think. So you can steal resources and move it to the Changeling lands for easier use. Okay. That makes a certain amount of sense. Rations for stability. Yes, do. Is that just it? Is that the final event? Just like, yes, harmony. Okay, I did get that to pop, so I need to complete one more, and then the Pax Chrysalis 3 is complete. I'm just gonna speed through that, because I'm pretty sure I basically just need to go and read a guide on how to do this, because without, it's just pure guesswork. So I'm just gonna speed through and see if you get all of them, if something interesting happens. Or if it is like a fucking visual novel at that point. I mean, hell, it's surely got enough reading for a visual novel. Crystal City, that's largely irrelevant, okay. Let's see what this one does. Boom, 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 boom. See, I do like that idea too, chat. Like, the two sides undermined each other, the harmonics and the other ones, and so at the end nobody wins, but... Well, it's the limitations of the story tree, isn't it? Okay, that's just one compliance in Ponyville, which is utterly useless. Because this is obviously meant to tell a very specific story, right? But if you try to tell two stories at once, and then you make those two stories reliant upon, well, clicking the correct options, whilst you try to tell two stories, then you're going to have a very big problem, as if you don't click on the correct choices in the correct order, one story will ruin the other story. And I don't think there is anything after that. An injured servant. Nope. So the anti-changeling insurgency widespread will then be permanent unless you click on the correct options. At which point, God, how much am I even losing in manpower now? Probably a fair old bit, I'd imagine. 118,000 a month? Yep, that sounds about right. That sounds about right, yep, more or less. Now, the general resistance is going down slowly, so if you're willing to sit here until like 2040, you'll eventually get back to a sort of a pseudo kind of normalish state. But yeah, you're gonna need to be very, very patient at that point. I am gonna try the, as Jan Holland says, I mean, again, the Queen's Card is really obvious. If you just followed your own personal instinct to the letter on what were good decisions, you would have gotten it fully. See, that's interesting, because every time I took a decision that I liked, the game punished me for it. And usually really harshly too, so I was like, okay, right, so clearly you don't want me to do this, because every time I do it, you give me a massive negative modifier. Alright. Okay, let's try and play the game the way the game wants. And that then gives you not enough point to finish the tree. Have I missed maybe like some, is there maybe... Because I tried to read, there's no... some of them gave you a thing, I think. Yeah, there you go. Feeding the hives tells you, complete one stage of occupationalization gets events Industries of Love. So some of them tell you... Most do not. Yeah, I think you need a degree of, like, foresight. Even with the guide and save and load, it was a pain. The axe I do think was too obscure. Yeah, I imagine. Okay, I'm gonna check that out now. Let me see if there's anything. Oh God. Okay. There is a lot. Holy shit. Oh yeah, no, it is a fucking visual novel. I'm looking at the guide right now. It is massive. Jesus. Okay. But points upon a word through national folks and events scattered across the packs of the sea. If players not careful in the decision, some points will be permanently lost and the decision will become impossible to unlock. Yeah, that's what I figured. Yes. So yeah, I got, how many points did I get? I got... Where was the button? Here. So I got 3 points short was what I got. So I needed at least 3 more points. I wonder if there's exactly 15 points or if there is an excess of points. Okay. And apparently you can side with the everfree forest as well. You know, okay. This is less a mod failing and more a systems failing, right? Because I see now what they were trying to do, right? They are... No, I don't think I avoided selecting things that gave points. No, because I always went for the points, I'm pretty sure. Maybe once? I think I dropped 1 point, I think. Because the alternative seemed more... better, but that never came to anything. Because I see what the modder is trying to do. The modder is basically trying to tell the story of the different factions within the Changeling Hive, right? So the Reformists and the more hardliners, which is pretty cool. But it needs to tell it through a series of decisions. And when you're trying to tell 2 conflicting stories via decisions, you're going to need one hell of a decision tree to manage to flit them together to the point where you can, no matter what, arrive at a conclusion. As now, I have managed to arrive at no conclusion, because the Harmonists haven't done shit, and the Zealots haven't done shit. And so, since we are now at the end of the focus tree, nothing can happen. Yeah, that's more of a focus tree problem than it is a mod or writing problem. Keeping Second Wind alive is necessary. Yeah, I'm looking at the guide now. It is kind of retardedly massive. I wonder if there's a proper, like, step-by-step one. Contest was the... Okay, unthinkable union. Apparently, you can even make a nation with the deers. Damn. They do have a lot of options, which is pretty cool. Our own harmony, I guess. That is a lot of stuff. That is a lot of stuff to read. That is a ridiculous amount of stuff to read. Now imagine doing this in multiplayer. I have once, it was hell. In multiplayer, you wind up fighting Kyria Griffonia eventually while managing all this. Yeah, no, I can imagine. As you basically need the document up by your side to see if you can see it. But, I mean, that's not very interesting. Okay, so I have managed to pick the path that gives no resolution, which is a bit strange. I thought I was picking the mostly harmonious thing, so I was kind of hoping to get at least a harmonious ending at that point, but apparently not. Maybe it was it like this also kind of like didn't turn into anything. The whole cult of Cornucopia, that kind of just also stopped. So if I wanted harmonic, you needed to keep Second Wind alive, presumably. Which means I clicked the wrong option where it's like, hey, even in opposite, like, what was it? You don't need to be happy about it just because it's happening, you just gotta get along. That was the choice that doomed it. God. Ooh. Oh. That is some stuff. That is some stuff. That is some stuff. Maybe you even then need to maybe keep the everfree forest. I wonder if there's a way to like save Twilight. Let me see. On the theory. Okay. So yes, if you manage to... If you can fail it, then you can get Twilight playable. Via the Manhattan Protectorate. So Canterlot loses, so Equestria loses. And then you force the revolt in Manhattan Protectorate. Then you get Twilight. God damn. I do like the sheer complexity of it, I suppose. It's just hamstrung by the decision tree more so than anything. Like the decision tree is what undermines it because it's what allows you, because it's what basically puts you in a position where you only have a binary choice. And then that binary choice is spread out across, oh god, I don't even know, how many other little dialogue windows. Yeah, I see what they were trying to do, it's not the right game to do it in. But that's a bit unsatisfying. Okay. I'll experiment with this a little bit, see if I can follow the guide to the point where I can recreate it, because I want another big war. I want proper Pax Chrysalis at some point. Yes, I like that. But for now, I am going to rest my voice for a little bit, because God help me, the reading is a killer. Until next time, chat, thank you very much for watching and for your generous donations as always. And I will see you all again very, very soon, chat.